Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are super excited about today's presentation. If you joined us for the 504 plan and IEP plan conversation, you are at the right place. We are joining you with Cayenne Wellness Center. Cayenne Wellness Center is a sickle cell organization in California that works with sickle cell patients and their families to really make a huge impact in California. And we have several really excellent caregivers and also a student who will be joining us today. Before we jump into things, I want to introduce everyone to you and give them an opportunity to say hi. So, I am Elle Cole. I am a caregiver. I have a 14-year-old. She has sickle cell disease and she has a twin sister. So, I have fraternal twins. One of my twins has sickle cell SS and the other twin has sickle cell trait. And so I am so thrilled to be able to have this conversation with you. I know all around the country, school is starting. And so us as families, we are trying to get ahead of this thing and really understand what we have to put into place so that our children are well taken care of. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce some of the other panelists today. All right. So while the other panelists are joining us, hi, Brenda. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
We are going to start with you. If you could just say your name and tell everybody about your connection with the sickle cell community.
Oh, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brenda Green. I'm founder and CEO of the Be Strong Group. But most importantly, I am the mom of three, and my youngest son, Braden Green, has sickle SC disease. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Next, we have Star.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Star Simmons. I am the president and founder of the Sickle Cell Foundation of Orange County. I have a 34-year-old and a 20-year-old with sickle cell beta thalassemia plus. So excited to be here today.
Thank you. Thank you. We are excited to have you. Next on my screen, we have Jasmine Baker.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine Baker. I am a sickle cell warrior and a current college student. I am a co founder of Sickleware with my mom, Francine Baker.
Awesome. Awesome. We can't wait to hear from you, Jasmine. Vanessa, you are next on my screen.
Excellent. Good afternoon. My name is Vanessa Rhodes, and I am a caregiver. I'm a warrior mom. That's what I am. And my warrior is 29 years old, and he has sickle cell SS.
Awesome. Awesome. So, for all of us, we are so thrilled that you all wanted to learn more about 504 plans. This team, as you can hear and see, we are all connected with the community. So, most of us are caregivers. So, we've been right in the same position as each of you. We also have Jasmine, who is a student who's been living this experience herself. And so this is an incredible team. We've come together to talk to you. So I want you to know we have some exciting things planned for you. I want you to be able to stay for the full conversation. We will be doing some giveaways at the end if you are able to stay for the full conversation. And if you received the email, then you know we sent out a workbook. I will be putting a link in the chat to that workbook so that you all can access it, so that you can follow along, add your notes, and have something tangible that if you would like to print it out, you can, and you will have a step-by-step guide as to what we are talking about today. So, without further ado, Vanessa is going to start this conversation for all of us.
Oh my God. There we go. It's my good pleasure to get started with you guys this afternoon. And you can go ahead, Elle.
Okay. Just a second.
Hold
But you
one
can
second.
begin.
Okay, great. So I am very excited that you're with us. When the presentation comes up, you'll be able to see I am actually a retired teacher. I don't know if I'm ever retired because I always find something else to do as far as teaching. So it gives me an interesting perspective from this standpoint of IEPs and 504s. I actually homeschooled my son on and off throughout the years that he was in school. So I've lived on both sides of the fence with that. So when we're going to school and when we're not, this makes my 38th year as an educator. I've taught preschool through grad school, and I've been a principal. I love everything about school, and you'll be able to see that real clear in a second. This is my 35th and 7th, 8th year as a wife, and I'm making fun of that because my anniversary is in 2 weeks, so I'm so excited. My warrior is 29. I actually have two boys. I've been in the advocacy field for 11 years, and we kind of were yanked over into the scene of it. We had a problem at a hospital, and that I had to go on to research because he wasn't ill as a young child. And you may have seen me around on some things. I currently on the staff of the Sickle Cell Community Consortium. I help program and facilitate the children's track when we have the conventions. I work with Warrior University also. And I also serve as part of the transition team for St. Jude Hospital because that's where we attended. We live in Little Rock, Arkansas. Is it ready, Elle, or
Yes.
is it not?
Yes.
Okay, great. There we go. And that's who I am. And these are my people. I'm the queen at my house. There are three of them. Joseph and husband and myself. Husband's name is actually Clyde, but he's called husband. We all have sickle cell traits. So we're all AS. And Clyde Rhodes is this one here. He's my oldest, and he is the one with sickle cell. You can go to the next one. Most of the information that I have comes from this textbook, and I have this up here with the ISBN number because I think if you want more information about sickle cell, it's pretty technical, but it's really a good book if you're really wanting to know about the science. And I really like this because this picture right here was painted by a sickle cell warrior. Next slide, Elle. So what is sickle cell? And you'll see this term SCD. That means sickle cell disease. I generally prefer to say sickle cell disorder because when you say disease, people seem to think it's something that's catchable. It is not. Right here, this is the family, the Rose family. And they wrote this, Lisa Rhodes and her husband collaborated with a doctor at that time. And they wrote this book called Sickle What? So every time I hear what is sickle cell, I think about this book. And she and I co-host the track together. Next slide, Cell. So between our two families, there are 14 people, the Rhodes and the Roses. We have 8 people that have trait in that group, in that picture that you saw of those kids. 4 sickle cell carriers and 2 freebies, I call them. As far as the gene type of their hemoglobin, none of them have it. So that's how this breaks down. And why did I put their family up there? Because you're always hearing that this is a Black disease. This is a blood disorder. It's not a disease for anybody to catch, and blood does not discriminate. So sickle cell is an inherited blood disorder that changes the disc shape of the cells to that sickle shell. And what has happened is there's a protein in the blood called hemoglobin. It loses its oxygen, and then it starts chaining together, causing that sickle shape that is known as the sickle cell. Okay, Elle, we can go to the next one. How do you get sickle cell? Again, it's an inherited disease. It's an inherited disorder that comes from the hemoglobin genotype that's in the parents. And most of the time you'll see this is called the Punnett square. Think about biology 101. They were talking about how you can make red roses and blue roses and all those combinations. Every parent that's involved in the birth of a child has an hemoglobin genotype. So this AA, when you see that, that means that those are going to be the disc shape or the normal cells. When you see this S, that's an indicator there's some process of the sickle cell. AS is sickle cell trait. SS is sickle cell. At our house, I'm the mom with AS. The dad is AS. When they say there's a 1 in 4 chance, that is a probability, not a ratio. So it doesn't mean you can have 4 kids and only one's going to get sickle cell. It means every time the mom and dad decide they're going to make one of these sweetie patooties right here, there is a 1 in 4 probability chance. One, that the child can have what they call normal shaped disc, or the child could have sickle cell trait, which means they have some sickle cells, but not enough that it's considered a full disorder. So they have 50% chance of doing that. That's 2 out of 4 chances. And this is every time. And then there's the 1 in 4 chance that each parent would give this gene for sickle cell. And this is what my child has. This Punnett square, here's the definition, and I put it there where you can see, here's a website where you can go and get more information about that. Okay, Elle, you can go to the next slide. This is some pictures actually taken out of the textbook that I showed you at the beginning, and that is that new textbook for sickle cell disease, and it's dedicated just for sickle cell, which is why I say go ahead and purchase it, because you can find all kinds of information there. The appearance of the sickle cell, once that hemoglobin protein comes out and it's sickling, this is some of the shapes it can be in. I hadn't realized that they're not all just straight sickle. A lot of them have jagged pieces, which is what causes them to catch on to each other. So right here, these are this disc right here. These are the normal shape. These are some of the sickle shapes, and you can see some of these jagged edges here. This picture is more complex, and the only reason I put it here is because sickle cell is complex. While there's some very generalized things that happen to all people that are in sickle cell, what sickle cell does to each individual person is as individualized as your thumbprint. Okay, Elle, we can go to the next one. How do they diagnose sickle cell disease? Well, in California, they use the heel stick, and that means when the baby comes out, they stick them again and get some more blood. In other states, I hear it referred to as the newborn screening. And then there are some places where they don't actually test until there's some symptoms that arise. And actually, that's what ended up happening with the Rose child, is they didn't check it in the beginning because she was not Black. Anyway, the whole process to find that out is a hemoglobin electrophoresis, where they actually smear the blood and then they look and count how many sickle cells are in there to determine if the child has sickle cell disease or not. Currently, for treatments, the only treatment that is considered to be a cure for sickle cell is the bone marrow transplant. A lot of what you're seeing on the horizon and that we're talking about, they have some new things in gene therapy where they can reorder the genes to help produce more fetal hemoglobin, to cause the sickle cells to not sickle so quickly. So there's a lot going on in this area, and we're very hopeful about what's next. Elle, the next slide. Something that's very interesting that I didn't realize in the very beginning is that there are several different categories of sickle cell. And if you look here, not categories, types of hemoglobin. One person said that their child has SC, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten whose it was exactly. Then beta thalassemia. And then these down here are rare. You'll see it listed as rare, probably more rare in the United States, just because of where it's located. But there's SD, SE, and SO. And then if you look right here, where can you find sickle cell? On all these continents. And this is not scaled to size because we know what the largest continent is, but nevertheless, everywhere, anywhere where there was malaria, there's you can almost look and see there's a malaria band. Where they had the malaria outbreak and disease, you can find some form of sickle cell. Next slide, please. What are some of the symptoms of sickle cell? I put this picture here because this was actually the first symptom we had, and my son didn't show the first symptom until he was 18 months old. Pain crises, fatigue, can be irritable, and sometimes they're irritable and they don't even know why they're irritable. But if you look and see what's going on, bedwetting, because there's can be some problems with the kidneys, and in addition to all the water that we have the children drink in order to stay hydrated. You may see the jaundiced eyes, where the eyes are turning yellow because of the breakdown of the bilirubin. This is called hand-foot syndrome, is what they call it, but you see there's the swelling in the joints. And what has happened is those cells have come together and started bonding like a gang, and they're clumping up in the blood vessels and in the capillaries. Infection can be a problem, and then anemia, just because the red blood cells are breaking down so fast. Don't have that be confused with iron anemia deficiency. Next slide. What are some treatments for sickle cell? We talked about the cures. Otherwise, you're going to be treating those symptoms. You get bed rest, extra fluids, things that help you stay very hydrated. In addition to water, you want to keep up those electrolytes. We actually had the child drink his eight cups of water to start off with. And what I did was, when he was little, we bought sippy cups, and I had 8 sippy cups on the counter. And once you drink your sippy cups, you can have whatever else you want to drink. But in our house, generally, there's nothing left but some juice or some tea. Pain medications, and yes, they take narcotics, not because they want to take narcotics like they're buying on the street, because they need it to alleviate that pain. Some children are even adult warriors, do a process called apheresis, where it's like scheduled blood transfusion, but it's more like a dialysis for the blood. So they have to go in, and then there's blood they get blood without the iron. They just get the straight blood, or they may have to be hospitalized. And that can run the gamut of just getting some pain meds to having to have rehabilitation and some rehab for the legs or anything, depending on where the crisis has taken place. Next slide. So what does all of this have to do with school? Well, sickle cell is, sometimes we laugh and say it's just disrespectful, because where can you have a crisis in the body? Anywhere where there's blood. What does that include? Organs, yes. Bloodstreams, yes. Joints, yes. Where else? Eyes, ears, teeth, stomach. So anywhere it can be. And you can have a child who's playing at recess and come in and say, I'm in a lot of pain. And how you're like, well, you're just playing 5 minutes ago. How could you be in pain? Because they didn't know that those sickle cells were going to decide to chain up and link and block off and cut off oxygen to organs, to joints, or any area in the body. What can happen at school? What would be good? Offer them an extra opportunity to rest. Allow them to stay hydrated, keep a water bottle close, or have them go and take water breaks. Give them a do-over, especially if they were tired. Maybe they had a crisis through the night and toughed it out and got up and came to school anyway. And the work just isn't up to par. And if you notice that as a parent or a teacher, go ahead and give them a do-over. They may need extra time to do work, or just time to sit and breathe. And just provide them with a comfort space. Our warriors can do and be anything if we give them the right support. And I know you're willing to do that because you're here at this workshop. They can swim, they can play music, they can actually participate in sports. They can study to be whatever they want to be. They may have to have some accommodations to get around, but they can still get around. Remember, it can occur anywhere in the body. Next slide, Elle. Listen, I know this is pretty rough, but I want you to understand one thing. Please believe a child if they say something is hurt, or something feels off, or they don't understand what's going on. Sickle cell hurts. And this came off of Dr. Simone East Owen. You can find her on Facebook. She posted this. It says, if you could see my invisible illness, would you finally believe I'm in pain? You see, everywhere there are blood vessels. That's where a sickle cell crisis can begin. Please continue to offer the love, encouragement, and support that I know you already give because you're here to find out what's the best thing you can do. Next slide, Elle. On here, this is from the Chatty Chick. She's also on Facebook, and I like this shirt because it says, who taught you to hate yourself? And sometimes when we're talking to the young people, especially during the track, they talk about not wanting to be sick, have sickle cell, and not wanting to be different, and wishing they were somewhere else and somebody else, and any of that. That comes by repeatedly not being understood is how you learn to do that. And this is a picture that I found with somebody who just said they had a hole in their heart. And it's an exhausting disease, it can be. But this picture here was painted by Hertz, who also painted that picture that was on the front of that textbook. And this one's called Hope. Because you're here taking this class to learn how to help this student, we can offer that student hope and we can be of good cheer. And then, Elle, the last slide, please. This is Hertz. He's in the book and you can see. And I just want to say thank you. I want you to know that we appreciate you. And if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to us. Use those toolkits, ask questions. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Awesome. That was incredible. What we wanted to do was set a stage for each of you to make sure that you understand sickle cell disease. Now we're going to start going into the difference between a 504 plan and an IEP. Thank you, Vanessa. You really made it plain so that we could really see that sickle cell can really affect any part of the body. You said that several times. And when we think about the red blood cells and how it's moving throughout our bodies to give our vital organs the oxygen it needs, now we know that everywhere that blood flows, a crisis can occur. So we don't want to be afraid of that. We want to get ahead of it and make sure that we're proactive and understand that if this happens while our child is at school, then here are the next steps we need to take. And so I am so grateful that you shared that. And just like, you brought in the art to really kind of illustrate what sickle cell disease feels like. And I think Hertz was a master at really bringing that pain into a visual space so that those of us who do not have sickle cell can really understand it. So I am super grateful that you shared his photos, and we will always remember his contribution to our community. I want to just take a minute for those of you who are thinking about IEPs and sickle cell disease. You may be wondering, what really is the difference? And I want to really set the stage for you. A 504 plan focuses on accommodations and modifications to provide equal access to education for students with disabilities. While an IEP, which stands for Individualized Education Plan, provides specialized instruction and services for students who require special education support. So, I'm not going to break that down for you. We have an expert who has been advocating for students and their families for over 30 years. Star is going to break that down, what I just shared with you, so that you can really understand how to put that into focus. So, can we bring up Star?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. And like Elle said, I would try my best to bring you the best information I can based on knowledge, based on experience, and based on the rules and the regulations of the federal government. So with that being said, can we pull my slide up, please? Okay, thank you so much. So the first part that I'm going to start off with is preparing your children for school, and we're going to focus on primary and secondary at the beginning. Next slide, please. So, as Elle was saying, we need to first understand the American Disability Act so we can know which part our child or the children that we're overseeing qualifies for. So, if you look up under the 504, 504 is a section of the IDEA Act. It is a part of your civil rights. So, 504 can be a temporary medical condition, as well as it can be a long term chronic condition, but a child can fall up under that. And with the 504, as you can see, it prohibits any type of discriminations against anyone with a disability. And so when you're looking at the American Disability Act, that is certain categories that falls up under the American Disability Act for different type of disabilities, which we will cover in just a second. But with that act, every school that is funded by the federal government must make reasonable accommodations available for our students to protect them so that they will be able to have accessible access to everything that a kid without a disability would have. And so when we look up under the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, which is the IDEA Act, that is anyone that falls up under the Public Education Act. So there is a difference when you're dealing with public schools and private schools, but the federal law is the federal law. But at the same time, if a private school is not federally funded, they still would have to create accommodations for that child as well. And so up under the IDEA Act, here it explains that a school is getting funded to provide a certain service to your child. So up under the 504, any services that are provided up under that still falls up under the American Disability Act, but it comes out of the school funding, any funds that they may have. But if that child falls up under the IDEA Act, which is any type of long-term disability or chronic disability, such as sickle cell, you will see, then that comes up under the federal funds, which is the IDEA Act. The great thing about sickle cell disease is that our children fall up under both. They would fall up under 504 as well as the IDEA because they fall up under a chronic disability and a short-term disability, which we would go into that next. Next slide. So first, what we should do, we need to understand our role when we are advocating for our children or those that we are guardians over. And so how do we prepare our children for middle school, elementary, middle school, high school, or college? What is my role? We need to understand that role so that we can be able to properly take the steps to protect them. And so understanding that role means that we need to understand what our part is and what is required by the administration, whether it falls up under the 504 or the IDEA Act. Next slide, please. So Section 504. Section 504 in the American Disability Act is defined as handicap or disability. As you know, we don't like to use that word disable. I like to use the term we are challenged because if you say it and a person speak it enough, they'll believe it enough. And we don't want to use that term, but unfortunately, that is the term that the American Disability Act uses for Section 504. So it's anything that's going to disable a person, such as if I have a peanut butter allergy, then therefore it could be temporarily, but it can be very harmful for me, right? So therefore there has to be some accommodations made at the school to make sure that it does not become fatal for me, because as we know, peanut butter disabilities, allergies are very serious. And so sickle cell, when you're looking at it from a sickle cell standpoint, you may have someone with sickle cell beta thalassemia, a sickle cell SS, and maybe today they have a disability that only affects them physically and not necessarily mentally. And so they're always feeling lethargic, or they have infarcts. So they may have a disability where they can't always get to their class on time. Or if I'm in the classroom and I take medicine this morning, maybe I'm a little lethargic. So a sickle cell person can go on the side of a 504. Next section. Slide, please. So when you look at the 504 services, this is really, really important. Your 504 planning team must consist with you in it. I'm going to say that again because sometimes parents think, oh, I'm going to let the team handle it. Well, you are the team. You are part of the team. The team consists of your educators, which are teachers, the school nurse, the school psychologist, the coordinator, the parents, the guardian, the caregiver, and the student. Now, I want to let you know here that when you're dealing with a 504 team, you don't always necessarily have to have a psychologist there because up under a 504, you don't need to have any tests done. You physically only need to bring a note from a licensed doctor stating that the child have a disability. You will have the parents there, the guardian there, and you don't always have to have the student there. I suggest you don't have the student there because sometimes, things can get a little heated. And so, because you're in a negotiation meeting, believe it or not, unfortunately, we have to negotiate for our rights, right? And so sometimes you don't want the child there. But it's important that if anyone's going to make any decisions about your loved one or the person that you are the guardian over, that you should definitely be part of that team. And so that team will come together and determine based on the student's need. Now, you may have 5 different people with sickle cell disease. However, all 5 of their needs will be totally different. So never let a school tell you this is going to be the plan based on another student that we have with sickle cell. Every student is different. So you have a right to be at that meeting. I suggest you be at every meeting and you make sure that your child have what he or she needs. But the accommodation team does consist of you. Next slide. Now, as I was speaking about earlier, you have the 504 and you have the IDEA Act. Sickle cell disease fall up under both categories. So up under the 13 federal categories, you will see what's called other health impairment, right? So when you look up under other health impairment, sickle cell will fall up under that section that says other health impairment. And then if you go to the next slide, you will see up under other health impairment, it shows right there at A, sickle cell disease. So not only do you fall up on other health, but you fall up on a sickle cell. So with that, you can be able to determine whether you want to use a 504 or an IEP. Next slide. So the IEP, now here is where you have that same team that's in the 504, but it is a little different. The difference is the school has to bring in the school psychologist, not like they have to do for a 504, but they will sometimes. But you can ask that the school psychologist be removed because we're not addressing anything mental, we're only addressing physical. So in the IEP meeting, the school psychologist does have to be there because they have to run their own test, regardless of what the doctor sends. They have to run their own test because that's how they base their benchmarks when it comes to your loved one's level and their needs of what they need to ensure that they have a proper access to a free and fair education. And so with that, one of the things that they determine is, what category does a child fall up under? So we've already established that it's up under the other health impairment. Now, with the IEP, what accommodation does this child need? Does this child need to be removed outside the classroom, or does the child need to stay in the classroom? Now, I will say to you, when it comes to an IEP, and I've been doing this 30 years, most schools will try to put your child up on an IEP with sickle cell disease. I don't agree with that because parents need to look and guardians at the future of where that child wants to be. If that individual plan on going to a university, this is something you need to look at. And the reason for that would be in an IEP, the individual is set up with benchmarks. Well, if the school is getting paid federally funded money, they're going to make sure those benchmarks fall a certain way. But with the 504, my child is in the same room with his peers and he's learning at the same level. The teacher might have to make some adjustments, but I can have my child to be in an AP class, an honors English class, what have you. With an IEP, because you're taken out of the classroom. So there's many modifications done to that curriculum, right? And also there's a lot of one-on-one. So anytime you're brought out the classroom, that's an IEP. So you want to make sure whatever the needs are for your child is in the classroom. Now, if there is some kids or young adults that have challenges in middle school and high school that requires them to be placed outside the classroom, then yes, you want to do that. That's an IEP, because some kids do have challenges, long-term challenges when it comes to um, cognitive functions. And so we want to make sure that you do get that. But I say if your child is just, having episodic crisis and maybe taking medication and maybe a little lethargic sometime, you need to make sure your child is up under 504 so that he can be able to remain in the classroom learning at the same level that his peers are learning at. And so that he can have opportunities later, because when you get to that senior high school year, and Joey wants to go to university, he's not going to meet the educational requirements to get into a university because he hasn't had 4 years of math or 4 years of English or 4 years of science. And so we don't think about those things, but I'm just saying to you, your child can be in honor classes and be up under 504 and get everything he needs. But if he's getting medication, he could still get that up under 504. But IEPs, you only really need that if there is serious cognitive functions there. Besides that, make the school do their job. That's what they get paid for. And they don't want to take the funds out of their funds, but they still got to do that. Okay, next slide. Oh, okay. Well, okay, I guess that's our 10-minute break. I guess we'll come back. I'll come back later.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Star. That was a lot of information. I know many of us have had to sit in those meetings and we've had to advocate for our kids. So when you said, it may not be in our best interest to bring our kids with us because it is a negotiation. I think that was very wise and key because we have to speak up on our kids' behalf. And some of them may need an IEP, but not all of our children need an IEP. So we have to really learn the difference so that we can better assess. Yes, we know that their teachers are experts, but just like on this journey, we've had to really become sickle cell experts. We also have to put our academic hats on and really get into the language and the understanding of IEPs and 504 plans in the school setting so that we can advocate for them, just like we advocate for them in the hospitals and at their doctor's offices. We have to do the same thing for them at school. So I am so grateful that you made it plain. At this time, I'm going to add a link to the chat. So I just put a link in the chat. It is bit.ly/504 plan toolkit. That is a link to our toolkit. So I know many of you did receive the email. We have a copy of that toolkit on the screen. And I want you to flip through the toolkit so that people know right at your fingertips, we have created a booklet so that yes, we want you to listen to us today, but we also want to equip you with the tools so that you can take this information that we're sharing and look through it. Right now, we are going through this information very fast, but as you can see, this information is catered for you. It is a guide to help you. I know you're not going to get everything that we say all at once, but we are really breaking it down so that you can understand what we've had to go through, what you're going to encounter, and we're going to share that information with you. So I see we have some questions in the chat, but I want you to have this tool right now as we're going through it. You can add your notes, you can add questions, keep going through the book, please, so that we can just show them. We have a description that tells you the difference between a 504 plan and an individualized education plan, which is what we call the IEP. Next, please. The key, and we will talk about this a little bit more, is really developing a supportive team. We have to have a team. We cannot do this alone. Yes, we're going to have their healthcare team, we're going to have their education team, but we also need our family members and our loved ones and our friends. There's the African proverb that says it takes a village. Well, when you have a child and you love someone with sickle cell disease, that concept of it takes a village has a whole new meaning, and it's on a whole new level. So we are giving you an opportunity to really understand what is involved. Next page, please. I want people to really see what they have. You can put your questions in here. There are some questions that's already provided. So as you hear the presenters talk about the information, you can begin jotting down different things that come to mind that you want to implement in your child's 504 plan. Next, please. So again, you can add your thoughts, add your questions. Next, please. And it's just a really great tool for you to go through. You will have an opportunity to print it off if you need it, but it's 14 pages and it's a lot of information that you can pull up. There are even links. So, yes, we're sharing this information with you, but this is a digital document that you now have access to where you can click on these links to learn more and really get more in depth. So if you are looking at the screen, I see a couple people say they don't see the link. I will make sure I add it. It was people on YouTube. I will add it there. It is on the screen right now. It says bit.ly/504 plan toolkit. For those of you who registered, we will send this out to you again so that you will have this toolkit. And I will definitely, I'm going to go into YouTube so that you can have this. So while you all are on break, I will make sure that you have this information at hand. And everybody, if we can look through the chat to see if we have questions while I'm adding that link into the YouTube meeting so that everybody will have it, that would be great. So again, that link is bit.ly/504 plan toolkit. So that is bit.ly/504 plan toolkit. So I see a question in the chat. It says, I wanted to ask, what was the name of the book that the lady, she's referring to Vanessa, was talking about earlier? If we could bring Vanessa on to tell us the name of the book, please. So Vanessa, we can't hear you yet.
Yeah, man, that technology, but I'm winning. The first book I was talking about is it's called Sickle Cell Disease. That's the name of the book. And I put that ISBN and I'll put it back on up there also. It's published by McGraw-Hill. And then these are doctors, and they're all in the Pennsylvania area. So if anybody knows any of this, Mark Gladwin, Greg Cato, and Enrico Novelli, I believe that's how you pronounce that. Those are the editors of the book. But there's a list of a lot of really good doctors and hospitals on there. And I'll get the ISBN number. And then the one that, and I suggest that all of you donate some books, some sickle cell books to your child's classroom and school library. And the consortium will also can help you with that too. But the book that Lisa wrote was called Sickle What? And they wrote that because they had never even heard of sickle cell. And then there was an accusation of, did someone go somewhere else with someone else? And that's why the child has sickle cell. And it just turned out both the parents had trait because they were in one of those European areas where there was malaria. So, and that one's by Lisa Rose. And then Elle has some coloring books. You need to get those and put them in the classroom, even in the upper grade, because there's some good workbooks in her activity book. But we've got a list of those books that I suggest you get a list of those and put those in those classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. I see we have another question. And again, if you all need to take a break, this is our break time. But in the interim, we will be answering some of your questions. I did go into YouTube and I added that link. It is from Cleverly Changing on YouTube. So if you look for my name, you should be able to see the toolkit. So the next question is, what do you do when the school refuses to give you an IEP saying that your son is not below grade level? So, Star, if we could bring Star back up to answer that question.
Yes. First of all, a school cannot refuse to give you an IEP. That is your federal right, and they're obligated. And if they do refuse, that's a violation um, of your civil rights. Um, what a school can do is test you, and then if they say that they do not feel that there is any challenges there that meet the IEP qualifications, you have a right after a school psychologist for that school district give your child or your loved one a psychological test. You have the right then to refute that test and go outside, but you cannot do that until first they give you a copy of the psychological report. And then you can go to an outside psychiatrist or psychologist and do the same test, which most likely they're doing the Connors test because they can no longer do the WISE test. So they're doing the Connors test. And then you can get your child tested. And then you can say, no, here is the second testing. Now, my question would be not so much about them refusing to give your child an IEP, is why do you feel your child need an IEP? Is it because of if you feel your child is behind, what made you come up with that determination that your child is behind versus the school says that your child is not behind? Because the school has to ensure that that child meets the same qualifications as the other kids. So I would like to see what was their reasoning behind not putting your child in a five IEP if there was no psychological challenges. Um, so that would be the question. Are there any psychological challenges for your child? And if so, do you have any proof of that? Meaning any grades? Because the school determines the IEP off of several things, right? So it's based on the psychological background testing. It's based on each teacher's own classroom reporting. It is also based on your students' grades, and it's based on your students' state testing. So all of those things have to, they are determined, they're used as determination, right? So like if I have a 504 and I want my child to have an IEP, then I have to prove why. But I would think you would want the 504 versus the IEP unless there is some psychological challenges there. And if there is, then look at the grade report, look at all of these things that I'm telling you about. And then if they're still telling you no, then you have my name. You can contact Cayenne Wellness, and then I can assist you further.
We have another question,
Mhm.
and that question is it possible to have an IEP and also take advanced classes?
Well, here is the problem with that. If you have an IEP, you're pulled out the classroom. And if you have an IEP, it's based on benchmarks. So you can't say that I want my child to be in advanced placement classes when they are determining that your child is learning according to a benchmark level. So that is what I'm saying to you. If your child is in an IEP and there is no serious psychological problems, if your child just needs adjustment to the way they take tests, but the test does not alter, meaning that maybe Joey likes his questions read to him instead of multiple choice, then that can be done up on a 504. That does not have to be done up on an IEP. If your child needs longer time test taking, that can be done up on a 504 and not an IEP. So you need to determine as a parent, as the advocate, as the guardian, what does my child need to get to where they got to get to without putting restrictions on them? Because sometimes we're putting the restrictions on our kids and we don't realize that we're the ones that are creating the barriers and not the school. So the answer to your question
Interesting.
is, can my child be in an IEP class? Can my child be in an advanced placement class? If my child has an IEP, chances are no, because your child is placed on a benchmark. And if he's already placed on a benchmark without being in advanced classes, how would he possibly be in advanced classes? Because he's not even meeting the criteria in the regular classroom setting to be able to have the IEP in the first place.
Wow, wow. Thank you for sharing. There
Mhm.
is another question that says, can a representative from a CBO, and for those of you who are not familiar with that acronym, CBO is community-based organization, be in attendance at the 504/IEP meeting if a parent requests them to be?
Okay, so you have the right to bring whoever you want into that 504 meeting. Anytime, doesn't matter who it is. So yes, you can have someone from, a community-based organization. You can have a family member in there so you can keep your cool. Whatever it's going to take for you to sit in there and get done what you need to get done, you can have that person. And sometimes I advise that, majority of the time I advise that, because there is something that is called a civility letter. So if you get in there and you get a little too emotional, that school will use that civility letter to stop you from coming into those meetings. So it's always good to have someone there by your side that would keep you calm, keep you cool and collective, and would be able to speak when you get a little too emotional.
Okay, okay, that's good to know. Did we have another question? What do you do when a school does refuse your child an IEP slash a 504? Is there a statute of limitations on when one can take legal action? Said child was eventually given a 504 plan after a traumatic experience.
Well, first of all, if you're requesting a 504 and an IEP, it should always be done in writing. So if it's done in writing, you want your response given to you in writing. Okay? Because if you spoke to them on the phone, they could say they didn't tell you that. So you don't have any evidence because the school is going to stick with the school. The staff is going to stick with the school. So it's important that when you request an IEP and a 504, everything is done in writing. And then anything that you are requesting from the school for your child should always, always be done in writing. Now, there is no statute of limitation, but where is your proof that they refused it? Because eventually they gave it to you. So that's the argument that you're going to be standing up against.
I heard that. So just to simplify it for all of us, put everything in writing. So make sure there is a paper trail. That could be an email. When I think of my childhood, people were still doing the manual letters to the school. But now we typically do an email that's still in writing because there is a paper trail. There is proof that you sent that. So
Correct. And
make
then
sure there is a paper trail.
digital, that's a digital paper trail. So that cannot be altered.
Right, right. I see another question in the chat, and it says, what is the process for a symptomatic trait warrior to get an IEP slash 504 plan?
Okay. So whether you have sickle cell or you don't have sickle cell, everyone has the right to a 504 and an IEP. Okay. So that's the first answer. Number two, when it comes to requesting a 504 and IEP, there is what's called a child find law. That's a federal law. Every school is supposed to be able to find a person that is disabled, whether they're at school, home instruction, or they're living out of a car. Now you say, how would they know if I'm living out of a car? Because even that is included in a census, right? And so it's recorded for your district. And so your district should be able to find you. But in the meantime, like most of us, we don't have time. So what we do is maybe Joey's been in school and it's not until fifth grade that he starts showing some type of symptoms to where we feel that he needs a 504. So then we put in the request. At any time, you just write on paper, send it in an email, and say, I would like to request a 504 meeting and an IEP meeting. They would then, the school would then send you a document and say, okay, here's the time, and then this is what we would need. If it's a 504 and it's something that is a temporary disability, again, if you have ADD, ADH, peanut butter allergy, allergic to certain things, you just have to have your doctor, who's a licensed doctor by the state of California, say, Star Simmons is under my care for peanut butter allergy, and that's it. And then you turn that to the school. You don't have to give anyone access to your medical records. That's all you need by the state of California, whether it's sickle cell or not. Because too many parents give their rights up to schools and you guys sign off and say, you can have access to my child's medical records. No, you don't need to do that. You just need a simple letter from the doctor saying, Star Simmons is under the care of Chalk Hematology Clinic for sickle cell disease. That's it. That's why you're a part of the meeting. You are there to tell the school what challenges I have with my sickle cell to school. It has been authenticated that I have the disease. It's been authenticated that I have a peanut butter allergy. So I just put in the request and that's it. The school has to respond to you within 72 hours. And so they're going to respond to you. And if they don't, you send a second request. And the reason you do everything by email, again, legal documentation. You got everything on record. So if I say someone refused, I got to be able to prove they refused. If the email came from one of the teachers, she refused. So that's all you have to do is just put in the request. Request for an IEP, that goes the same way. Of course, the team is a little different. You have the school psychologist or the school psychiatrist. You have the 504 coordinator from the district there, because 504s are treated a little differently because they're federal funded money. But you're still going to, at the end of the day, get whatever it is that you need. Whether it be a 504 IEP, no school should refuse you. They cannot refuse you, and they cannot refuse the services. If you are asking for services that the school is incapable of handling, that school either have to figure out how they're going to do that, or if you found another school that can do that, then that school has to pay for that out of their federal funds. If it's an IEP, not a 504, if it's an IEP.
Awesome, awesome. So we are right at time. We used that whole break to answer some questions from you guys. We will bring Star back on in a few. We actually have Brenda, who's going to be coming up to share her personal experience as a caregiver. She has a son. And then Star will join after Brenda, and you'll get an opportunity to ask more questions a little bit later. But we are going to also reiterate in the chat, look for the workbook link. We have a workbook for you today so that you can follow along and so that you will have a checklist. It is bit.ly/504 plan toolkit. If you look at the screen, on the screen is the link. It's a short link that says bit.ly/504 plan toolkit. And that is the workbook. I'm so glad that you all are joining us. If there is someone that you know that should be at this meeting, share it, share the link with them, share the broadcast with them so that they can join you and hear firsthand and have an opportunity to ask their questions a little bit later. I want you all to stay on. We will be doing a giveaway. So there is an opportunity for you to win some incredible prizes. And we've just been having a ball. We've been talking about 504 plans and IEP plans. They are not the same. They are not the same at all. And so we are breaking down the difference between the two. So come on, bring Brenda back up. And I'm just in the chat. If you are enjoying yourself and you learned something new, put that in the chat. If you learned something new, add it in the chat right now. Oh, so we have a comment that says the workbook is a great addition. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate all of you for joining us. And we want to make sure that you have the tools that you need so that you can advocate for your children. We know that some of you are teachers, some of you are healthcare workers, some of you are parents. And so this is a guide to really help you understand what children with sickle cell disease need in the school setting. Awesome. So we will get to your questions a little bit later. We're going to save them and we're going to bring Brenda up to share her caregiver story. Hi, Brenda.
Hello, hello. How are you, Elle?
Awesome. Awesome. I'm just having a terrific time learning. I can't wait to hear your story.
Oh my goodness, I've been learning too. I've been writing down my notes, and I am so excited to be here.
Yes. So if you guys are listening in, grab a pen, write your notes. Again, we shared a workbook. You can print that off and take notes. But share this event with a friend. Let them know that we are talking about sickle cell disease, 504 plans, and IEP plans. All right, I see someone, there's a comment and it says, I am a school based therapist and find the information about the difference between 504 and IEP very valuable. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to let Brenda take it away. I can't wait to hear more.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm so glad to be a part of this. I know this is something that's so important. Okay. My name is Brenda Green. I am the founder of the Be Strong Group, a nonprofit here in Columbia, South Carolina, that we founded in honor of our warrior, Braden. We can go ahead and get into the presentation. And yeah, so if you already downloaded your workbook or if you have notes, I want you to jot down some notes. We've already heard from Vanessa and Star and got some valuable information about sickle cell, about the basics of 504 IEP. Where I'm coming from is from the caregiver perspective. So my son, I've had a little over 17 years of this experience. He's 17, Braden is 17 and has sickle SC disease. Um, and in this picture, you see myself, my husband, and Braden in the middle. He's a rising senior, and I'm not going to say too much about that because I'll start crying. This has been a long journey, you guys. And Braden my mom watched him for the first 3 years of his life, and then he started preschool for kindergarten, 4-year-old kindergarten, and then he started public school in the first grade. And this has been a long journey. Just the health side of it, managing the health side was so important. So if we go to the next slide. So there were some takeaways I have that I want to share with you. So I didn't start off knowing everything. And that's one thing I had to get over. I do have two old babies. That's what I call them, older daughters, Ebony and Brianna. And I thought I was on my game, super mama. But I realized as going into this journey, I couldn't do it all, and I did not know it all. Okay, I had to get over that. So, and I realized also on this sickle cell journey that I had a village, and I have a very strong village. I love my family, but I also realized that my village, my circle had to get bigger. Okay, because I didn't know everything and I couldn't know everything. I needed people on my team who I could go to and know the things that I needed to know and get the resources I needed at that time. So I'm going to talk to you. You can go ahead and scribble down because I know you have your team, but to make sure, we call it my A team. And I have a fellow advocate who kind of gave me this idea because I'm a football girl, I'm a sports girl. So think about it. Your team, you know, football, you got the offense, you got defense, you got special teams, you got the coaching staff, you got the quarterback, you have fans. So you have to put together your team. So we're going to talk about your A team, your academic team, your resources and tools and things we can do. So next slide. Okay, so first, Like I told you, this journey is not easy. It's been long. And not only do we as caregivers have to manage the health side, take them to the appointments and manage that, school. So once Braden started in preschool, it was all about education. There were a lot of teachers who did not know what sickle cell was, why it was so important, why flu season was so scary for me. And I had to help them understand, help them learn. So getting my A team together, I had to know the people. Next slide, please. I had to make sure I had each part of my team together. So first thing first, communication is the key. Communication is so important. And I'm a communicator. I will email you, I will text you, I will call you, I will come to you to find out what I need to find out. And as advocates, the ultimate advocates of our warriors, we have to communicate. I know a lot of our warriors and a lot of caregivers like to keep things secret. I was like that, but I figured out really soon that that was not going to help Braden. Okay. Now I didn't have to tell all my business, but I needed the key people on my team to know what's going on, because if people don't know, they can't help you. So in order for you to get help, you got to open up and let people know what's going on, what's wrong with your warrior, where the complications is, where you need help, where you need help. It's okay for us super mamas, super daddies to get help, the caregivers to get help, but we have to communicate. We have to be open. That is so key. Next slide, please. Okay, this team, okay, like remember football, you got your defense, offense, special team. Well, you're going to have your medical team. So that can consist of your pediatrician, your hematologist, your social worker, your psychologist, your child life. And fortunately, where Braden gets care, we have all of those things, and we love it. And guess what? They know Brenda Green. They know my face. They know my name. They know my voice. They know Braden Green, his face, his name, his voice, because we communicate. And so each one of those persons on our team, I can go to when I need help, when I need more information about a therapy, when I need back to school notes, or when I need recommendation, okay, when should he get the flu shot? Different things like that. A teacher needs some education. Those are things I can go to my medical team for. Braden's having a difficult time adjusting, especially during COVID high school. We were virtual. That was a really difficult time for him, but thank God I had the psychologist, I had child life, I had his hematologist that I can go to get the support that he needed. So put your team together. Go ahead and jot them down, but make sure they know who you are and communicate with them. Let them know what's going on at school. Keep them involved. Let them know when the 504, the IEP meetings are. Let them know if you feel that any of those plans throughout the school year needs to be adjusted or tweaked. Talk to them. Next slide, please. So we got a medical team. So you're going to have your school team. So that's team, and we heard some from Star, guidance counselor, school nurse, teacher, administrator, that's the principal, and all the staff, the school district leaders and staff. They should be on your team. Somebody from each one of those areas should be on your team. They should know your name, know your voice, know your face. Okay. And know your warrior's name, voice, and face. Okay. They should know who you are. And Braden went to a pretty large elementary school, over 800 students, but they know me not only because of his journey, but because I was also involved with the school. I was on the PTO. I was like on all the events. So I was actively involved in the overall education as well, because he wasn't always sick, but he always needed to go to school. He wanted to play t-ball. He wanted to, participate in the activities that goes on in the school. He wanted to go on field trips. So I was there. Make sure you know your team. So we got the medical team, we got the school team. Okay. Next slide, please. Y'all, I can't say enough about my family. Now, for most of us, that's our core team. That's our village. That's our circle. This circle I had to make bigger, but they are my core team. You need your family. We need someone who will be able to pick up our child if they need to be picked up from school, or they need to be dropped off after a doctor visit, or if, like Star mentioned, we want to take someone with us to go into a 504 meeting. My sister, my baby sister, is a principal, and she assists me at those meetings from elementary, middle to high school. So your family can be grandparents, aunt, uncles, cousins, siblings, friends who are like family. Me, I could be on your family team. I'm a fellow caregiver, a fellow advocate. Our other fellow warriors, adult warriors, can be on your team. Everybody doesn't have a huge family like I do, but make sure those core people who can support you through this process, because like I said, we worry about the health journey, but the educational journey, navigating the IEP and 504 to make sure, things are in place so our warriors can have the best environment to learn, because they deserve it. So make sure that core family team and that village together, somebody you can vent to, that's what they're for. You want to ask about a teacher, or if some family members have had a teacher before, how is that teacher, or any type of support like that, make sure that that part of your team is together. Next slide, please. Got to have leaders, you got to have coaches, right? So in my situation, the leaders of our team is myself and my husband, but it could be whoever's in your home that's making decision about your warrior. It could be you, it could be you and your spouse, it could be you and your parents, you and your best friend, whomever in your household that makes decisions. And by being the leader, the head coach of your team, you have the right to add to your team and take away. So if there's somebody on that team that is not advocating correctly for your child, or is not there to make sure your warrior is getting what they need from school in that environment, remove them from the team and add somebody else. Because we are here, and I feel that we as caregivers are chosen to raise these amazing people. It's our honor to be able to amaze them. But with that comes responsibility. We have to make sure everything is in place to make sure they have the best opportunity to learn possible. And that has worked for me. I tweaked it through elementary school, but through middle school. And it got to the point where the nurse from elementary school called up when he was transitioning to middle school, let her know. So she already know. So it's if they know you, if you communicate, things are this journey it won't make it super easy, but it'll make it easier to travel and to navigate. Next slide, please. Of course, you got to have a quarterback. You got to have a superstar. So the reason why we're doing this, why we're advocating, is because of our warrior. They are the reason. But guess what? We got to listen to them too, get their feedback. But we know some challenges I've had with him. A lot of time he doesn't want to be treated differently. He doesn't want to be have the spotlight on him. He wants to do the same as his friends. And I'm like, you absolutely can do that. But just because the teacher said you can only have one, or the students can only have one bathroom break, but when you're hydrating like that, if you need multiple bathroom break, you have those accommodations, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's what you need to make sure you are okay. So, because there's been days, and we had to work on that, because there's been days when I picked him up in the carpool line and we've had to go straight to the pediatrician or straight to ER because he held it in for so long. But we have to talk and communicate with our superstars to let them know this is all for them, and for them to get the education they deserve, and in an environment that's best suited for them. So listen to your warriors, get their feedback, let them tell you what works, what doesn't work. Let them tell you, listen to them when they talk about the interaction with the teachers or with the staff, with other students. So if something needs to be changed in that 504 plan, Braden has a 504 plan. If some accommodations need to be changed, it can be changed. But their feedback is so valuable because, and they lead the team and they direct our path. Next slide, please. So I know that was quick, but I want you to make sure you got your team identified. And I want you to go through it every school year. At the beginning of the school year, go through that team, make sure everybody is there. Of course, your school team may change from teachers, but one good thing that I use, and it comes from our hematologist office, we get a package of some background information that teachers should know. So at the beginning of the school year, with every one of Braden's teachers get, hey, this is Brenda Green, how are you? And this is Braden, this is the things he liked to do. This is my contact information. So they get an email with a bio. Oh, by the way, I've attached some information about sickle cell disease. And most times, and we've been so blessed through each level, a lot of the teachers respond, oh, yes, the school nurse already provided me with that. So during the summertime, preparing for the year, a lot of times the nurses already talk to the teachers and they're prepared to see Braden. But I still send the email because I want them to know, and I want them to know that I am a communicator. So you have tools, you're learning about IEP 504. We know we have individualized healthcare plans, emergency action plans, homebound, intermittent homebound. That's something that your hematologist office or pediatrician office can help with and communicate with the teachers. That's where that team comes in, because if they looking at you like you don't know what you're talking about, you can call up the professional, say, hey, can you give them a call? I've done that. I've had the hematologist to call the school and talk to the guidance counselor. So your medication list, know what medications your child needs at school versus home. Your child understand what they need, why they need at school. So have that all, and I'll have that all in place. And parent centers, each state has a parent center. And this is a location where you can get a lot of other resources. By being connected with Cayenne Wellness and the Sickle Cell Consortium, you can get a lot of information as well. But reach out and find your parent center. In South Carolina is Family Connections of South Carolina. They have a lot of information, especially when it deals with disability for children and school-aged kids. Next slide, please. So things to remember, make sure you know your child's rights, okay? Star mentioned that. Communication is key. I can't stress that enough. Speak, be involved, be actively involved with the whole school journey. But make sure you have your meetings, you're in person now. And then make sure you communicate constantly with teachers and with your physicians, let them know what's going on, and with your warriors. And invite your family, that part of the team, invite them to sessions like this, invite them to symposiums, let them learn more about sickle cell, and they can help you advocate. And you're going to have a strong team once you do that. So your A team is important. Help them stay educated like we are. I'm learning tonight, and I've been in this for 17 years. And I'm waiting for the next speaker because we're headed to college. So, but always continue to learn. Don't ever be afraid to speak up and advocate, because we know a lot of times it's life or death, and we're not risking that for our superstars, right? So next slide, please. So SNAP, these are some of our caregivers. I think a couple of them are on tonight listening. We're constantly learning. We have a Project Empower where we're sharing and learning as caregivers to become more empowered. And like I said, it's the whole family, auntie, anybody who loves or care for someone with sickle cell disease. That's who should be on here and wanting to learn more on how we can help and support. Next slide. And it was such a pleasure to talk to you, to share our perspective of what worked for us. I'm looking to carry that on all the way through college. So wherever we end up, I'm going to make some connections to make sure I advocate for Braden as he finished his education career. So I hope that wasn't too fast, but it was a pleasure to share that with you. I think you're on mute, Elle. Elle, we can't hear you.
So before you go, there was one question that was specifically for you, and it's from Francine, and it says, Brenda, could you speak about who from the school district was in your team and how did you choose to reach out to them?
Well, and of course, I will forget her name right now, but she is the person that's over homebound, intermittent homebound. And it's kind of a weird setup of how our system is set up. I think homebound only lasts for like 3 months or so. So it has to be repeated. And a lot of times, if he has a excuse absent, I write homebound, they were like, oh, it's expired. So I had to find out who the person is to make sure it's not expired. And it was her. So she's my main person on the team that I need to communicate with. But I am also active in the district level. So know the district superintendent, as well as the school board, just be involved overall.
Get to know as many people as you can so that when
Absolutely.
they see your child, they will think of you, get in touch with you, talk to you, communicate with you, just be active. I
Absolutely.
definitely received that. My child is 14. So all of this information that we're gathering, I saw a mom said in the chat that her child isn't in school yet. Well, now's the time for us to get this education. So when your child gets into school, you'll already be prepared. So this is the perfect time to find out more and to know how to navigate this system. So thank you, Brenda. You shared a
Absolutely.
wealth of information, and we are going to bring up Star. We're going to have a question and answer period a little bit later, but we're going to bring up Star because I know Brenda talked about college. She talked about, Brenda's son is in high school, and then he's going to be moving on to college. We can't wait to learn more about, as your child matriculates through this school system, what next. So thank you, Brenda.
Thank
And
you.
Star, take it away.
Well, first of all, let me just say thank you, Brenda, as well. Brenda, you are the epitome of what we talk about when we're saying have that parent in the room, that advocate in the room. Be involved, stay involved, ask the questions, and also make your presence known. And you have done all of those things, and that is what it takes to make sure that your children succeed in school. Because if the school doesn't think that there's anyone backing them, they're going to do what they want to do. Now,
Absolutely.
schools are that way because I have been dealing with school districts for 30 years and you have some great ones. But let me tell you something, without that contract, which is that 504, the IEP, we're just speaking. So
Mhm.
the teachers are not obligated to do anything. They can be nice as they want to be, but that contract solidifies everything. And you, that parent, that guardian, that advocate is going to make sure that everything is done in writing. So I commend you for that. And just know that all these great nuggets that Brenda is dropping to you, they apply in every state because everything that she's saying is they're your federal rights. So thank you, Brenda. All the things that I would do as a parent, that I've done as a parent. Now, moving on to college. Well, college is very exciting for us. But guess what? Being mom, being guardian, being advocate, that's no more when it gets to the college level. Okay? And what I mean by that? Well, once your child hits that 17 years old or that 16-year-old, they become property of that university. That means that I'm going to give you something really good right now. Make sure that when your child is doing that application to that school, that they give you full access to their records and full access to being their advocate. Now, colleges don't follow the same rules as schools because they have something called the disability support services. So they're just providing a service to you. So it's not like I can go to the counter and say what I want. It's a little different when you get to college. So when your child is applying for college, you need to make sure that number one, they put you on their documents to say that you can speak for them, you can advocate for them, That way you can make sure that all the paperwork is done and they're getting the services that they need. The school no longer deals with the parent when it comes to college. So you're not going to have that. Not anymore. The only way you're going to have that is by your child allowing you to have access to their medical records, to the school records, and to be a voice. Now, most of you are going to find that to be challenging because when the kids go to college, it's something about these different people from every walk of life come there and influence them and say, I thought you're going to be a young adult. Why you got mommy helping you? Why you got daddy helping you? Don't give them access. They're going to know if you get in trouble with the school. They're going to know this. Well, what I did was I explained to my daughter and my son, I'm not there to see what you're doing behind the scenes. I am there to make sure that I advocate for you when something happens and you can't speak for yourself. So I'm going to give you an example. If your daughter had a 504 in school and IEP and she goes on to college and she applies for disability support services, and then something happens to her at school, an incident happened, you would never find out about that incident because you don't have access to her records and the school does not have to tell you anything. So do that at the very beginning when your child applied for that college. In that package, it would ask you, do you need any support services accommodations? And so it will be a different document that you sign up with disability support services. Now, the school will ask you for a previous 504 or IEP, because that's for them to determine what services you received in high school and what are the different services that you're now asking for. Now, the services are somewhat similar, but though they're not, meaning that the school determined the services and then the professors adhere to that. You can't go in the classroom and negotiate with the professor. Whereas in elementary, middle school, and high school, you can have a broader IEP or 504, and then you still can go in there and negotiate with the teachers. You can't do that in college. It's just written in stone, and that's the way it's going to be. So it's important that you solidify all of these services while they're in high school, whether they need it or not, because when the college gets it, they're going to look at it and say, well, if he got all these services in high school, he's going to need this in college. So it's going to help you later. So think ahead, plan ahead, if you will. Also, one of the things about disability support services that we don't notice is that when your child goes to college, and this is something that I learned, I have a 34-year-old and a 20-year-old, is that if they're signed up with disability support services, especially with sickle cell disease, because that's what we're talking about today, you can be able to ask for your loved one to have their own apartment or their own dorm room. And the school will have to assist you in doing that at no additional cost. So let's say most of the time all freshmen, sophomores, and juniors are placed in a room together with another person, or 2 or 3 to 4 people in an apartment. But if you say that maybe like COVID, there was a lot of different type of, it was COVID going on, colds going on, flus going on. So you can say, no, my daughter Alyssa cannot share a room with anyone. You can just get your doctor to say, Alyssa's immune system is weak, and it is preferable that she does not share rooms with anyone. Then that school will adhere to that. Now, they may not put your daughter in a single apartment, so they may put her in a single dorm, and she may have to walk down the hall to share a common bathroom. But the point is, she got her own room. That is something that we want to do because we know that sometimes our loved ones, they're in a lot of pain and they don't want to deal with other people. But you can't just say that to the school because that's not going to allow you to have your own apartment. But you could say to the school, due to the fact that my child have a chronic illness and their immune system is weak, I don't want them sharing room with anyone because it can break down their immune system even more. And then as long as the doctor write a note like that, then that's a way around that. So those are things that can help your loved one while they're in college. As well as, of course, there's no 504. It's just called disability support services. So they give you all the services you need. There is no IEP transferring over, but the services that you were receiving with the IEP or the 504 can be transferred over to the college level. So you still would be able to now, additional would be Instead of, you can still have additional time to do your work and turn in reports. You could still, you can even not go to the class and just do it online. Or even though you're in person, you could say, well, because he's sick, he's only going to come online, or just have him to turn in the paper. But all of that needs to be solidified at the front end and not later. Because like a 504, when you have a 504, you can change that 20 times a year. You cannot change, well, you can change disability support services in college, but it's a little harder because you got to go through a whole process. So it can take a month or two. So you want to try to get everything you need at a high school level. So when you transfer things over to disability support services and they look at the previous paperwork, they can administer those services as well as additional services to your loved one. As well as, I'll give you an example. My daughter was in a summer abroad class, and this past summer, and one of her summer abroads was Paris. Now she flew 23 hours to go to Paris, and she flew 23 hours back because she got sick. That program for that summer program was $30,000. Now, if she was not signed up with disability support services that already noted that she has sickle cell disease and things can happen, number one, we would have never got reimbursed for the money we spent. Number two, her classes would have been a fail, which would have affected her GPA. And so you want to make sure that your child gets signed up with disability support services, because you cannot look at the future and say this is not going to happen. She had just came back from Rome, so we thought if she went to that study abroad, she could finish this one. But no, she did not. And so we had to be able to show proof with disability support service. Oh, she can, the class, you can remove the class and not let it affect her GPA because she signed up with disability support services. So they were able to check that. And then the summer program was able to be able to remove her class without it affecting her GPA. But if your loved one is not signed up with DDS, that will not happen. So these are things that you need to make sure that when your loved one is signing the package up for college acceptance, that you are there doing the paperwork with them. And let them know you're not taking anything away from them. You're just trying to add to them. You're just there to be their support system. As I explained to my daughter, you're a young adult. You're more than capable of doing what you need to do. But I need to be here to assist you to make sure that you have access to the proper tools, as Brenda said, that you need to be able to complete the process for college without any adherence. We need to make sure that you're getting everything that you need. And so that's how we have to let our loved ones know. With the DSS services at college level, you're not talking to one person. You may get 5 different people. So you're not going to build a certain relationship with them like you would do in middle school, elementary, middle, and high school, because you're dealing with whoever is in charge at a district level. So that 504 coordinator is assigned to you from kindergarten to 6th grade, and then the other coordinator from 6th to 8th, and then the next coordinator from 9th to 12th. So there's a way for you to establish a relationship. You're not going to be able to call your child's school and talk to these people. So everything is done simply through paperwork and online. Any questions? Is having a 50 IEP or 504 will affect what college acceptance? No, absolutely not. College acceptance. Okay, so let me say this to you. A 504 in the IEP, you have the right, because some people don't know, you have the right to have those services removed off of your report card. Now, when you're in elementary, middle, and high school, when you're getting 504 IEP services, it's usually placed on your report card. So when your child is playing sports or as a cheerleader, we don't want that outside team to know that my child have a disability, right? So you need to make sure that you go to your school immediately and say, I want the 504 and the IEP removed off my child's report card. So then no one sees that. Now, for us getting accepted to a college or a junior college because you had a 504 and IEP, absolutely not. That has nothing to do with the other. However, you will only have a challenge getting accepted to a university if you have an IEP, if you not have met the qualifications of universities, which you need to go pull that, because all universities require 4 years of math, 4 years of English. And I will say this to you. My son went to a private high school He went to Mater Dei when he was in high school. So I knew he was going to go to a university. Private schools don't require you to do 4 years of English and 4 years of math. So they're going to try to put your child on a certain curriculum, right? Well, I did not allow that because I work with colleges all the time. I knew at ninth grade, I made the school make sure they put him in 4 years of math, 4 years of English, 4 years of science, because I knew he was going to go to a university. So even this applies to private schools. If your children are in private schools, make sure, as Brenda said, that you're involved with their academics. Make sure you just don't. You got to remember, counselors sometimes are your 20-year-old college students, like my daughter, who has teaching credentials. So what experience do they all have to say, well, I know, your child is going to go to university. It's okay. Even though they have the requirements, they're not going to push. They're going to say, well, we don't want to put too much stress on Joey. So I think you shouldn't make him take all these classes. Well, you're the parent, and I think what Joey can handle or not. So you got to be in charge. You got to be the advocate, and you got to stay on point when it comes to what schools your child are looking at, what the requirements are. If you know that your child wants to go to a university, then you need to be right there involved from ninth grade, because everything counts from ninth grade on. As well as, I wouldn't put too much pressure on them in middle school, because everything really matters from ninth grade on. But we just want to make sure they adapt to a certain behavior, learn adaptive behavior to where they're studying and doing their work. But ninth, 10th, and 11th grade is what really matters when it comes to school, colleges accepting you, and looking at your GPA and looking at your requirements.
Incredible, incredible. There was a question. I know that you answered it, but I wanted to back up and state it. The question was from Gate of Salvation, and they asked, does 504/IEP also apply to college/university level students?
Okay, so again, 504 and IEP is only at a primary and secondary level. It is not at a college level. When you're looking at colleges, you're only dealing with disability support services. So 504 and IEP does not exist at a university level, only when it comes to elementary and middle school and high school, not colleges. But disability support services replaces your 504 and your IEP services. So they replace the services. But for as the bathroom breaks, those things like that, I mean, that's physical. So yes, they can still do those type of things, but and have extra time for tests. But there are some things that a college does not allow that is allowable in a 504 and IEP at a elementary, middle school, and high school level.
Awesome, awesome. All right, I see we have another question. Does a 504 or IEP have place with homeschool umbrella programs?
Oh yes, yes, because even when you homeschool, you still fall up under the school districts. And even when kids are homeschooled, you still have the educational plan that comes from the Department of Education. So you're still covered up under the Department of Education. And so if you're doing a homeschooling and you got 6 kids there and he has a 504 and he needs these services, you still have to do that because you're still acting like a school. You're just doing it as a homeschool and you're still falling up under the same criteria as a public school, because the curriculum that you're giving them still comes from the Department of Education, because they still have to go and meet those state test deadlines and criterias as well.
Yes, I see one more question before we move to the next presenter. And this question says, my wonderful and loving brother died from SSA at the wonderful age of 27. How can I convince my mom to become an advocate for parents dealing with IEP/504 plans?
Well, first of all, let me say I'm so sorry to hear about your brother. Um, these things take time. Your mom has a story. You have a story, right? And her story and her journey may not take her to advocate for someone for an IEP at 504. Her journey may take her to advocate in the sense of being an emotional support being. And so I say, just keep her in prayer, and just continue to remind her that she has a story, and that whatever she's gone through, that is for her to be able to help others, and let her do it on her time, because when it comes, trust me, she will be able to help so many people, but she has to heal first. And so we can never determine how long or how short that healing should take for one another, right? So just be there to support her, and then allow her to be given the vision to where she should be able to go. And when she does get that vision, she will run with it in due time.
Thank you. Thank you. And our condolences to you and your family. We have one more question before we move to the next presenter, and it is, what accommodations would be most beneficial for students' academic success?
I am so glad you asked that question, because there is a prototype that I use minimum for every single person, no matter who they are, how smart they are. I use it for every single person. And that would be number one, bathroom breaks, because you want to go when you want to go, and you're not going to let anyone determine you not to go. Number two, the usage of water, um, completely in every classroom, regardless of where they're at. Number three, having access to their cell phones, regardless of the board policy that says that no cell phones are allowed. Because I may not necessarily have a good relationship or a comfortable relationship with my teacher, but I should be able to text my mom and say, I'm sick, I'm not feeling good. And the schools will do this, because this is where you argue. This is those negotiations that goes on in the back room that we don't want Joey to be a part of. And then he can text me when I don't get those bathroom accommodations. Number four, you always want to make sure that your child have an extra set of books. No matter what they say, they must have those extra set of books. Number five, they have access to teachers' notes, because even though your child may go to school every single day and sit in the classroom, because we like to send our kids to school and we don't just want to keep them home, and we know that about us, then I want to be able to make sure that my child is getting the proper notes. And he may be sitting in the classroom, and he took medication this morning, so he's a little lethargic. So he's looking out the window, so he's not really attentive. But everyone else get to have that classroom instruction. So I need to have the same classroom instruction, but at a later time when it's more conducive for me. So that is something that you can request. Also, being able to use my notes for every test. Now, you're going to get a little pushback on that, but they're going to agree to it. And the reason being is because we all know that even if you do an open book, and that's the argument, you do an open book test, it takes longer for a person to find the answer in an open book test than it does to have the answer right there in front of you, right? So you could say, okay, either you're going to let me have notes as a form of recapping what I already learned, terminology is everything, or you're going to let me use my open books. And the reason being is because, again, your child would have studied for that test, but by the time it comes time for that test, he's not feeling good. But if I have notes here and not the exact answer, then, and my notes can be the answer without giving me the answer, because it's called recall. So you want to make sure that you have that so that your child could be able to use that. Number three, being able to have additional time on every test regardless. And my main one is regardless of what the BP policy says about attendance and absence. Every school has a policy that states whether it's 2 days, 3 days, or 5 days, to every day you miss a school excuse, you get to turn in your homework. I require for every person I advocate with, for every day they miss school, they must have 5 days to that one day. So you say, wait, if he missed 10 days of school, he's going to get 50. Well, the great thing about the school district is they have the ability that after report cards have already been sent out, they can go in and make an adjustment to your child's report card. So know your rights, because we cannot say, well, okay, that 5 days is acceptable, because we know one day can make a difference. And then the very last one is regardless if my child is in the classroom or not, when it comes to test taking, if he or she does not feel well and want to complete the test on another day, they can come back and make up that test and without any penalties. So those are your main ones that you always want. And let me tell you, they have to give you that because I've dealt with too many school districts that already has given it to us. So therefore, it means that it's part of the rule. So if you have any challenges requesting that, again, you can always contact Kion Wellness and I can be able to assist you regardless of what state you're in.
Thank you. That was fantastic. I feel like every one of us feels a little bit more empowered than we did before we joined this call because we've learned so many things we didn't even know were an option. So thank you, Star. We're going to bring up Jasmine now. I know you all have been waiting to hear from someone who's lived this, who has been a student with sickle cell disease and is navigating the process. And so we have Jasmine Baker, who is going to share her experience with you. Jasmine, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am happy to be here and share my story. Um, I do have a presentation that I'm going to speak from. So, yes, this is going to be my perspective from a college student. I'm also going to give a little background from from primary school to now being in college. So, next slide, please. So, I'll talk to you guys about my experience, the challenges I faced over the years, some tips and tricks I've learned along the way, and then the overall takeaways, something that I think you guys could use moving forward as your child, or if you are the student yourself, are moving into college. Next slide, please. So, my experience growing up. Um, you can go to the next slide. I do have pictures. I just want to speak in terms of me as a student. I love school. I love learning. Um, Regardless where I am, I'm going to be getting my work done. These are pictures of me at doctor's offices, in the hospital, working on homework assignments because it's just what I do. Um, Ironically, I'm in school to be a teacher, so I also love teaching. And I just want to share this part of me to get you guys to understand that I'm currently going into my senior year as a college student, and I have a 4.0 GPA. And I don't say that to like brag, though it is something that I am proud of. I just want you all to know that it is possible to be a hardworking student. We all know they get stuff done regardless of the pain that they're in. And so it is possible to be successful, do well in school, um, and if you take the necessary steps to help you along the way, it will make everything easier. So, next slide, please. So, here's a little timeline of kind of what I remember because there are a few things that have forgotten, whether I just don't remember or my brain chooses to not let me know. But starting from elementary school, before I had a 504, I was a part of a study where I realized that I was getting silent infarcts constantly. So I had to be put on monthly transfusions, and that caused me to miss school twice a month. So I was missing at least 2 days a month since I believe second grade is when it started, or third grade. And this caused me to fall behind in math. So as I stated earlier, I love school. I've been in advanced classes since third grade. That's when they started moving students out of their class and putting them into advanced math. So I was in advanced math. Um, but because of these monthly transfusions that I was receiving, I started falling behind. It was a lot to kind of catch up on and maintain. Uh, as you know, or if you don't know, when you have monthly transfusions, you have to get labs usually the day before, and then you have to come in for a full day of the transfusions. So missing that class time, I was missing a lot of instruction time, and so I fell behind in math. And third grade was when they pulled me from advanced math and put me on level math because they said, and they, when I say they, I'm assuming it's my teachers. I know my teachers had a conversation with my parents. I wasn't really privy to that. I was kind of oblivious. My third grade self wasn't really aware of what was going on. Um, So they removed me and put me on level class. This was before I had a 504. And I my mother is my primary caregiver. Um, so I can't speak for her, but I know that we weren't necessarily aware of what a 504 was and what it meant during this time. So being demoted is what I called it. Being demoted from that math class was the school solution. Later on, my mom kind of learned more about 504s, and she had a conversation with a few different people, and there was some pushback on me getting a 504. Again, third grade self wasn't really aware of what was going on, but I do remember having a conversation with my mom before I was demoted from my math class about being, or she had come, my mom had come to me and asked me if it was okay to be switched onto on level classes. And because of the overachiever that I've always been, I didn't like that idea, but my grades were a concern, I guess. I mean, I was in elementary school, so I don't really know who was too concerned, but um, against my will, I was moved. And so moving on to when I got a 504, this had to be around, I'm going to say fourth grade. There was constant meetings with teachers, um, my caregiver, my mother, and my doctor. I again was not aware of these meetings, so I can't really speak much on that perspective. But I remember receiving accommodations, and that included like extended time. I was able to have snacks and water. I was able to have, the bathroom breaks. So those were the main accommodations that I received, and I remained on the on level math class. So middle school is kind of the biggest turning point. This is when I became a little more like active with my sickle cell, or kind of advocating for my sickle cell. And this was a big turning point because now you're introducing multiple teachers, you're switching classes for different subjects, and there's just a lot more people that have to be aware of the situation that you're a part of. And so my mom, being the awesome caregiver that she is, she handled a lot of the informing and the communicating part of letting teachers know like what was the big deal with sickle cell and what needed to be done in terms of my academic success. So with multiple conversations, this means that she would kind of have her own letter, her own draft of letting teachers know how to handle or what accommodations I need and what it looks like in terms of me being in the classroom. And so we have, your students sent home with a syllabus for every class to go over the rundown. Usually your parent has to sign the syllabus. So this is when my mom would sign it and then leave comments on, XYZ. And also this includes emails. So moving on to high school, it became more my responsibility. This is around the time that me and my family kind of learned the difference between a 504 and IEP. And this workshop has been amazing because there's still some things obviously I don't know. And so I we believed at this time that I should have gotten an IEP after hearing, all this wonderful information. I'm not sure I still believe that, but um, I kind of felt that there was a lot of pressure on me to maintain like my accommodations, because I feel like with a 504, it's kind of on you and the caregiver to ensure that you're receiving the accommodations. At least that was my story. So I had to inform my teachers. Again, there's multiple different teachers. You have to constantly remind teachers what your accommodations are. And sometimes teachers, if you're not keeping up that constant communication, there's a lot of pushback when it comes to utilizing those accommodations. And I must add that, like most warriors, we don't want to be the center of attention, and we don't want to be different. So it was hard for me to kind of step outside of that and say, well, these are the accommodations I have. I have extended time on this test. It was definitely a little challenging for me to kind of advocate for myself. But this is when I started missing school like long term. I remember freshman year of high school was the first time I missed like a whole semester of, or a whole quarter, I guess, of school. And so that was very challenging because, again, the fight with kind of making sure that you receive your accommodations was hard because on one hand you're trying to handle your health and make sure you're good, but on the other hand you're trying to advocate for the accommodations that you do have. And I didn't have the best counselors. I had an awesome social worker, but it was a little challenging. But that kind of leads me to college. I understood what I needed, or what um, I guess I understood what I valued in terms of accommodation. So it made it easier for me to transition into receiving, again, it's called disability services when you get to college. It made it easier to receive these services because I had a track record of what I've been doing over the years. And so, in terms of the accommodations that I received in college, I was able to utilize the accommodations that I've had over the years to let my disability counselor know that these are the accommodations I would like, and these are accommodations that's helped me over the past. So you can go to the next slide. While they're pulling that up, I do want to talk about the initial conversation I had. Because of COVID, I graduated in 2020 of high school. Because of COVID, my first year was spent at junior college, and so receiving accommodations was a little different because everyone was online. So um, it was more so just a conversation with my professors and, well, initially my disability counselor. Um, to let them know that these are accommodations I would like. And this conversation happened over the phone. So what I did was so I went to Montgomery College my first year. I typed in Montgomery College Disability Services, and usually they have a phone number. So I'd recommend you contact the phone number, ask them what their process is, and then they will get you in contact with a disability counselor. And then you can have a conversation with that counselor on what accommodations you've had in the past, what accommodations you'd like. And so currently I'm at the University of Charlotte. So here's what my disability portal looks like. Um, I can access my disability student portal, and I'll talk a little more about the note-taking portal. But same thing with Charlotte. When I transferred from Montgomery College to Charlotte, before I went to Charlotte, this was over the summer, I contacted the disability services, and as you can see, the contact on the right side of the screen. I just called that number, or you can email, whichever one you prefer. Again, we talked about the having a record, a running record. So email might be helpful if you want to keep track of, the conversations that you're having. So I reached out via phone. They got me in contact with a disability counselor. And so that disability counselor, we had an in-depth conversation about the accommodations I've had from middle school to high school, and what I would prefer to have as I move forward in my college career. And so this conversation, depending on, every school does it differently, but depending on your disability counselor, they'd like to find out a little bit about your diagnosis. So we had a conversation about what sickle cell looks like and how the traits exhibit in my academic career and what can be done. So they can also navigate, they can help you navigate what accommodations you'd like to have moving forward, whether you've had it in middle school or high school. So that conversation I had via phone was very helpful. She got me set up with my student portal, and because my semester has not started yet, I was not able to show you guys what my portal looks like. It's kind of empty right now. But you can go to the next slide. I want to share with you guys what my letter looks like. So after that conversation, the portal my portal has all the accommodations that I've had, and it might be a little hard to see, but in yellow, you can see the academic accommodations that me and my counselor talked about. So this includes assignments, having additional time on assignments, being able to have supplemental course material just in case I'm not in the classroom. I'm able to have my lecture notes from the professor. Another one is food and water, which in college, depending on the professor, that's not really too much of a concern. But recording class lectures is another big one. Depending on the state that you're in, there's some laws with recording professors, but as long as you let the person know and you're not like uploading it, I'm sure it's fine. But make sure you know the laws and regulations of your state. And then in blue, the blue box, you see I have test accommodations. That's additional time on test and having the option. When you get to college, there's a disability service office. Every college has an office where you have disability services, and depending on your campus, your university, that disability service usually houses testing rooms. So you're able to sign up when you have your final, your midterm, to let the so that means that you're able to go and not take the test with the whole entire class, but you're able to go to the disability services office and have your extended time without any interruptions or anything. And it's a quiet space, so that's what I found helpful. So this letter is what is sent out to my professors. What in terms of my portal, you guys, if you can go back one slide, please. In terms of my portal, when I click on disability student portal, I'll have a list of my classes, a list of my professors, and then this letter. And I check send accommodation letter to each class and each professor. So, sorry, next slide. You can go to the next slide, please. And this is the letter that's sent out. So again, my semester starts in like 2 or 3 weeks. So this will be on my radar, but I don't have it yet. But the same accommodations that I've had so I'm a rising senior. So since sophomore year is the same letter, just adjust based on the class and the professor. So next slide, please. So let me talk about the challenges that I've faced over the years. This includes the challenges I currently face as a college student. Next slide, please. The big three challenges is lack of support, the change of responsibility, and communication. So support is a big one. We talk about, having a village, it takes a village, and that is very much true. So when you don't necessarily have the support that you need, it makes things a little bit challenging. I've been blessed to have a wonderful caregiver, wonderful family, great social worker, but it is kind of a challenge when the onus is on you. I feel like with the 504, the onus has been on my family to ensure that I'm receiving the accommodations. That's just my story. That might not be everyone's story. So building a support team is definitely your responsibility. I know Miss Brenda spoke about that, and Miss Star as well spoke about that. So having a support team, building your A team is very important. And the lack of support is definitely challenging when your teachers don't understand what's going on. So you don't feel that support from your teachers or professors. So that has been something that I've struggled with over the years. And the next thing is change of responsibility. I would say that as a 21-year-old right now, my mom is always my forever caregiver, and my dad, he's also a caregiver, kind of. He's just my dad. But in terms of change of responsibility, I felt like from 18 to now, I'm kind of my own caregiver, if that makes sense. So that change of responsibility is definitely something that I wasn't prepared for. No matter the long talks of changing from pediatrics to adolescent care, I feel like I wasn't necessarily prepared to be my own caregiver. So that change is definitely hard because you have to learn to advocate for yourself. And if you're not used to speaking up on your own behalf, if you're used to your parents doing it or your caregiver, it's definitely something that you should practice doing now so that when the time comes, you're able to make that change. And so then I have never in the hands of the school teacher professor. This is in regards to having a 504 plan in primary school. I felt like their responsibility wasn't, or they didn't necessarily take that responsibility. It was definitely something that I had to do myself. If I never told my professors or teachers that I had a 504, I had accommodations, they weren't going to know, or they weren't going to seek that out to help me. So I had to be sure that that was known. Not wanting to be different means not wanting to utilize accommodations. And I'm trying to think, I don't necessarily think I struggle with this now as a college student, but definitely in middle school and high school, I didn't want to be the kid that was still taking their test past the time because I had extended time, or leaving the classroom to take extra bathroom breaks. You don't want to be seen as different, so you don't want to use the accommodations. And when you don't use the accommodations, you're your teachers don't think you need them. And so when you don't need them at that point in time, but then you eventually need them, they're like, well, you didn't use it before, so why do you need it now? So it's kind of a whole cycle. Um, and then communication, we talk about this a lot. Constant communication and check-ins with your school, your teacher, your caregiver, your healthcare provider, it's all important. And sometimes it becomes overwhelming. I know for me as a college student now, I I do my best to communicate, but when you're sick, it's not always, easy to do. So again, maintaining communication while sick, and then getting teachers and professors to understand that this invisible illness that we do have uh, sometimes exhibits itself in random ways, or you may not be expecting to have a pain crisis, or you may not be expecting to feel one way, or you look good one way or one day, and then the next day you come to class not feeling your best and asking for extra time. So you just kind of have to fight for your rights, fight for your accommodations, and make sure that regardless of how often you're using your accommodations, if you have them, they should be used when you want to use them. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk about what was done well regarding my academic career and health. Next slide. Again, while I said support was a challenge, support has also been something that has been done well. Having an A team, my care team, my family, my friends, my caregiver, having a great social worker. I was blessed to have a social worker who was well versed in sickle cell, so she understood sickle cell, what it was like to go through sickle cell, which helped me when I needed to advocate for my rights as a sickle cell patient. Under having understanding teachers, and this, I mean, I'm not gonna say it's a dime in a dozen, but teachers have a lot on their plate, and when you have teachers that understand and take the time to like make sure you're good, that is something that is very cherished. So make sure you thank your teachers, make sure you thank your support system. Again, the sickle cell community, it's a part of my support, but I want to give them their own category because I don't think I started becoming my own true advocate until I was deep into the sickle cell community, having talks with people in the community, going to consortiums and working with people who are in this environment. So that's when I started understanding, like, kind of the ins and outs and what we go through and how I can support my not just me and my brother who has sickle cell, but my community in general. So being involved in the community, and I've been able to receive a lot of good advice. Things like this has helped me. Like this consortium has helped me moving forward in my academic career. I get to hear from other people and their stories and what worked and what didn't work. And so I like to, do the same for others. And so the last one, being prepared, is very important. I like to think I'm a prepared person. I like to plan things. I love lists. But I will say the one thing that I've done well over the years was being prepared to go to college. And so that is kind of an extensive process, and it looks different for different people. My preparing started when I was a sophomore in high school. I started touring colleges to see, just the area, what the sickle cell area looked like around the colleges is very important. Making sure you know the closest hospital, making sure you know the climate, just how they treat people with disabilities. Do your research on your college, and that's the biggest advice I can give you. Because if I didn't do my research, um, I could be in a school in Alaska where it's cold and not getting any sickle cell support, and obviously that's not going to help anyone. So make sure you know where where your warrior wants to go to school and the hospitals around it, and just know their disability support system, know how that works. And then being educated on 504 and IEP, and I kind of didn't get much education on that until I started taking courses. As a teacher, I need to take special education courses, so I learned a little bit about that. But now you can start now in knowing the difference. So having accommodations in middle school and high school prepares you to have these accommodations in college. So make sure you know the stuff now. So attending this workshop is very helpful, and you're already on your first step into, success. Speaking with disability counselors, like I mentioned earlier, that initial phone call I had with my disability service counselor was very helpful. I felt like she understood where I was coming from. She knew me as a student and how I like to learn, how I like to be successful. And she helped me navigate how I can receive accommodations and how I can let my professors know about accommodations, which leads me to my next point, communicating with professors before each semester. So, like I said, my semester starts in 2 weeks, so I'll already begin having this conversation with my professors. It starts by sending out my disability letter and then following up with office hours and having a conversation with my professors, each professor, about the type of student I am, what sickle cell is, how it exhibits in my life, and how they can support me. So these are things that have really helped me along the way in maintaining my academic success. Next slide, please. Okay, so I just want to give favorite accommodations. There's some accommodations I won't use, not necessarily for the whole like I don't want to be different thing, but I just don't find them helpful. So the four big ones is extended time on tests and assignments. Tests and assignments is very key because I think at one point I didn't have extended time on tests. I only had them on assignments. And so when I added that for having extended time on tests, I noticed a big difference because I didn't have to rush. I didn't have to feel stress. You know, stress and sickle cell, they don't go well together. Supplemental material as a college student, if you miss class, depending on the class, um, you can definitely fall behind quickly because 9 times out of 10, you're only having the certain specific class 2 times a week. It's not like high school anymore where you have the same class every day. So you miss one class a week, you're definitely missing a lot of course material. So having the lectures, having recorded lectures, having slides, having any notes that my professor is using while they're presenting is very helpful, especially when it comes to me being hospitalized. I'm able to utilize, and it's kind of like I think during the pandemic when we had our virtual um, when we had to be virtual was very helpful because people realized that hey, we don't have to necessarily be in person to receive the same material. So sometimes supplemental material may mean zooming me into a class if I want to be home from school because I'm not feeling well. So you can always talk to your professor on how they feel about Zoom, hybrid, if even if this means I won't, as a professor, zoom you in, but if you ask one of your classmates to zoom you in, sure, that'll count as your attendance. That you'll be able to get the material the same way. Again, attendance policy. As a education major, they have a very, at least at Charlotte, they have a very strict attendance policy because we're graded. Not graded, but professionalism is something that is important. So you can only miss like 2 or 3 classes for the whole semester. And obviously, as someone with sickle cell is very, unpredictable. So I can't necessarily say, well, I used my 3 attendance, but now I'm sick. So having adjusted attendance policy is very helpful in terms of letting the professor know that this policy can apply to me respectfully. Um, I'm going to have I'm still going to make the work up. I'm still going to make sure that I'm doing what I need to be doing, but I won't be graded so harshly on my attendance. And again, I will say communication. If you have an adjusted attendance policy, whenever you're sick, I'd recommend you email your professors, CC or BCC your disability counselor. Let them know, hey, I'm sick. I won't be in today. This is my X absence. But again, going back to my accommodations, I shouldn't be penalized for this absence. And if there's any pushback from your professors, having that communication with your disability counselor, they should be able to fight and advocate on your behalf to ensure that your grades are not falling because of it. And then note taker. This was something new that I didn't have as a college student that I didn't have in high school, which I highly, highly recommend. I'm someone who loves to take notes. I love a good lecture. I'm a nerd. I love to write down like everything the professor says or just take notes. So when I miss school, I feel like I'm missing like a lot in terms of the material I have to study from. So having a note taker is very helpful for accessing what was said in the classroom aside from the supplemental material that was received. So if this is possible, I can't speak for every campus, but we have a great note taking system, and I think that's on the next slide. If you go to the next slide, I'll be able to break it down. Actually, before I break down the notes, this is what it looks like from an email from Disability Services. This was a screenshot I took I didn't take any summer classes, but this is what it looks like when they reach out to you. They let you know that, hey, this semester's coming up. If you haven't sent out your letter yet, your letter has been uploaded to your portal. You can go ahead and do that, and it gives you some links to give you step by step instruction on how your accommodation letters can be sent. And next slide is the note taking. So every semester, if you have a student who, or I guess every semester, if you are requesting a note taker, your classes will automatically send a letter out to the whole classroom. So every student will get this email saying, hey, Office of Disability Services has a student with a disability who is requesting a note taker. And it's an anonymous thing. So if you ever have the feeling of, oh, I don't want to be different, or I don't want people to know that, I need extra help, it's fine. It's all anonymous. So this is sent out to every class that you're in. Um, and it'll let you know if someone signed up to be a note taker. And again, I'm not in classes right now, so I couldn't show you what my note taker portal looks like. But if someone is kind enough in your classroom to accept this opportunity, they will take notes, they'll upload it to the portal, and then you'll have access to that portal and those notes. So for every class, you'll have those notes. I haven't had a problem with this accommodation. Usually, there's someone who, because they get community service hours, so there's usually someone in the classroom who is able to take notes on your behalf. And if there's no one to take notes, or no one takes this opportunity to volunteer as a note taker, I recommend making friends with someone in your courses, in any of your courses or all of your courses. As a friend, say, hey, I'm going to be out. Do you mind taking notes and sharing your notes with me so that I can go over the notes while I'm going over my supplementary material? So making friends, again, part of support. You don't necessarily have to tell them why you're sick. I've made good friends, and they all know that I have sickle cell, so they know when I'm sick, and they are able to help me along the way. But you don't have to do that. You just simply say, hey, if you can help me with this, maybe we can study together, a little trade off. And next slide, I believe that's the last. Okay, so some tips. As someone who's been doing this for, I guess, 21 years, well, I'm 21, but I haven't been in school for 21 years. So from kindergarten to college, the biggest takeaways I say is get an advocate. And this should be an advocate aside from your caregiver. Um, you're not saying your caregiver is not your advocate, but having someone aside from your caregiver to advocate on your behalf is definitely important, because when you're sick and your caregiver is trying to take care of you, there's a lot of emotions going on. There's a lot, just a lot going on in general. So sometimes it's challenging for your caregiver, challenging for you to advocate. So whether it's a social worker, a family friend, a teacher, someone that can advocate on your behalf while stuff is going on is very helpful. Two, know your rights. You do have rights as just in general, as just a citizen in the United States, you have rights. And we talked a lot about IEPs and 504s and the difference. Know the difference. Know that you can't. No one could deny you your rights. And going back to one with these rights, you might need to advocate, because some people don't know what these rights entail, and so you might have to educate them on that. Three, communicate with your provider. So I'd say the biggest thing that I did was I had a great hematologist over the years, and I spoke with them on, me as a student. So they understood me as a student. Again, you saw in those pictures, I was always in the hospital doing homework. So they knew what type of student I was. They knew I didn't play about my grades. So discussing with your primary care, your hematologist, any provider, what needs they think you should have or what needs you have is very important, because sometimes they'll tell you stuff that you may not know about. In terms of having snacks and water when I was in elementary school, I didn't know that it was a big deal to be, hydrated and always have food in my stomach, especially when it comes to medicine. So these are things that your provider can discuss with you, so that you can be aware of what accommodations are beneficial to you. Number four, keep records. And we talked about this. A paper trail is your best friend. Making sure that you are aware of what you've had in the past will definitely help you in terms of transitioning to college, because a lot of the accommodations that I have as a college student is the accommodations I've had as a high schooler and middle schooler. So if I didn't have record of what I had, it would have been harder to have that conversation with my disability counselor on what was beneficial to me. So keep record of that. Keep record of what professors are doing in terms of if they're denying you your access to accommodations. That's good to have on record so that in case of anything in terms of your grades in college, you're able to fight on your behalf if there's some discrepancies. Like, say I lost points for attendance and my professors know that I have an adjusted attendance policy. Having record of this, that's why I say blind CC or CC, your disability counselor, is something that's very important. Know the difference. This workshop was great in breaking down the difference. Refer back to this workshop. This, I'm sure, is live on YouTube and it's a streaming service, so it's a video you can come back to. Having the toolkit that Elle put in the chat is very helpful. Refer back to that. I hope you guys were taking notes. Don't just use it for just today or just a few weeks of school as school is starting back up. Refer back to it constantly so that you're aware of your rights and you know the difference between the two. And then you are a warrior. We're all warriors, caregivers, warriors. We got this. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do anything. I'm living proof that you can do it all. You can do all the extracurricular. You can be successful in school. Despite being sick, accommodations have definitely helped me along the way, and don't be afraid to use it. So if someone's telling you that you don't look sick enough to have extended time, so I'm going to deny you that, just let them know that you know more about accommodations after today, so that's not true. And if you need help, reach out to your support system because we all believe in you. The sickle cell community believes in you. So you are not alone in any of this, and you have people that can back you up. So last slide is just my contact slide. If you guys need to reach out to me in terms of questions, my Sickleware email, and I have my phone number that you guys can all use.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jasmine. I know, like all the parents who are listening, it is such an inspiration to hear how you've experienced what our children are going through and you're thriving. So I wanted to say thank you. It is, this really wouldn't be a conversation that we all really need if we only had one perspective. The fact that you were sharing your perspective from a student's perspective, from living it, from going through it, it's just made all the difference. And I think it's very helpful for us to listen to what our kids need and not always think we know everything. We have to listen, we have to talk, we have to keep open dialogue with our children to find out what they need. One of the things I think is very important is that as caregivers, we have to believe our children. Sometimes, sickle cell is invisible. So sometimes we can look at our kids and say, are they really not feeling well? And question them, but we have to establish opportunity where they're open and honest with us. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing and, seeing your accommodations that you're able to get in college definitely gives me hope that my daughter will one day be able to go to college and also get accommodations as she needs. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everybody. Now we have a special time for question and answer. I know that I said I'm just going to remind you guys, for those who have stayed for this conversation, we do have a giveaway. We are going to give 3 gift cards. We're going to give one $100 gift card, one $50 gift card, and a $25 gift card. So we want you guys to stay for this conversation, ask your questions, put your questions in the chat. If you are watching us from YouTube, and this is really for all of you, go to our YouTube page. So go to youtube.com, type in Cayenne Wellness Center, and subscribe to the page. We often offer you incredible conversations just like this one, and we need you guys to attend. And the way to do that is to get our YouTube notifications so that you know when we're having excellent conversations just like this one. We had incredible guests today. We can bring the guests back on and we can start going over people's questions. I just wanted to say thank you all for joining us. This has been truly incredible. I've learned so much. I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I didn't really tell my child's academic background, but for the first 7 years, the first 7 of her academic years, so from kindergarten through 7th grade, I homeschooled my child, mainly because I felt like I would give her a better opportunity to have a strong foundation. And I really wanted her to be in school because I loved school. I loved school so much. And I didn't put her into school until she was in the 7th grade. And she goes to a private school, and I've been playing catch up with these things with 504, IEP. I've really had to learn. I've been trying to learn all I can. So I am in the same shoes as all of you. I am learning, I am growing. And I realized Jasmine talked about needing accommodations for needing more time for her tests as well as for assignments. That is huge because towards the end of last school year, I noticed my daughter needed more test time. She didn't want to speak up, but the fact that you talked about learning how to speak up for yourself, you've learned how to be an advocate. That is huge because we don't just want to be there advocating for our kids because one day they have to advocate for ourselves and they start that now. So thank you all for joining us. We're going to go into the chat and see if there are any questions. Okay, so this question is from Barbara, and it says, can a 34-year-old who did not receive the IEP 504 plan be serviced by DSS? Never qualified for the service, but it was evident it was needed.
So, yes, I mean, DSS is there for anyone that's disabled, regardless of when the disability occurred or incurred. So, yes. So you just have to go to disability services and fill out the paperwork, and then they will go from there,
So I
based
just
on disability and based on the need.
Yes. And I know sometimes people get tripped up when they see acronyms. They're like, what is DSS? So, so say it again for us. DSS stands
It's,
for
dis-
what, Star?
it's disability support services.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Can we have more information on the language for 504 and IEP? So, Cherie,
We can send them. They can either go to American Disability Act. They can find the acronyms and things like that there.
yes. And also, we sent out a workbook. There should be a starred link that shows you the link for the workbook, and there is language and information in there that you can use to find more information out about the language. And that workbook is bit.ly/504 plan toolkit. So it is case sensitive. So you got to make sure you make it all lowercase. And again, that's bit.ly/504 plan toolkit. So that should be easy for you guys to type into your URL and go to that link and get the workbook. But if you registered for this conversation, we will send a follow-up email to everybody so that you get your workbook. So the key is register. And do we have any other questions? Listen, while we're looking through for more questions, if you have enjoyed this event, just put a thank you in the chat. I know I have, so I'm just going to say it to each and every one of you. Thank you. This has been a long conversation, but it has been excellent. So many different perspectives and just different knowledge. We heard from a caregiver, Brenda, who shared about her son. We heard from Vanessa, who's an educator. I don't even know if you talk to them, really about your education background, but Vanessa has been a principal. Vanessa, tell them a little bit about your background.
I've been teaching since I was 5. But actually, the first group of children I taught, I was 10. I went to Sunday school, and the Sunday school teacher didn't show up. And my cousin, who's always trying to boss me around, I was 30 before I figured out she was only 4 years older than me. She said, "Get up there and teach this lesson." So I did. And then we went to Sunday school class. We went to the little class that you go after Sunday school, and they asked the questions, and our class won. And then the superintendent said, "Where's the teacher?" And the kids went, "She did it." And I got in trouble because we were in this classroom alone. From that point on, I didn't want to be a teacher anymore. Now, once I became a teacher, I realized that was on the grown-ups. How come they didn't know we were in that classroom alone? For that whole Sunday school hour. But I do love teaching. I've had the good fortune that every stage in life I've been able to have a teaching position that went along with my life. I'm like Elle. I decided to keep my son at home because when we started, we were in California, and when he was born, you could have up to 36 kids in a classroom. And I just could not see how we could navigate 36 kindergartners, and if he needed to lay down, he could lay down. Do you know what I'm saying? So we stayed home. We had a small stint at a small private Christian school in LA, and I was the principal there, so I went to school with them. So I never did fill out these IEPs or the 504 because as a teacher, I had a stigma for when I taught public school about what was going to happen to him, and I didn't want him labeled. I promise you, you want to throw away every stigma you have about every single thing. We did, because we were at St. Jude, understand we needed to go over to the Office of Disability. And Jasmine, oh my goodness, I learned so much more. Thank you, because I will be sharing that. That is important. Clyde was in the hospital and he was fighting for his life. And a professor wrote, "It doesn't matter that you were in the hospital. You don't make any determinations, blah, 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 blah." And it was real crazy. And because he was at a Christian school, I said, send that email over to the head. Now, because he went to a small school, I actually knew the people in the Office of Disability. We had that kind of favor. The head turned around and wrote this professor back. The follow-up letter was, "Oh, bless the Lord, you're healed. So glad we have the time for you, blah, 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 blah." These are important. I wish I had known, Star, about that dorm room. We had more problems with children turning on air conditioners in the middle of the summer, which we all noticed. And he fell asleep one night, no air on, woke up to an icebox. Guess what happened next? ER. So those things are so important, you guys. I learned so much that I will be passing this around, and I will be popping that video on the thing. But I love teaching so much. When I got with the consortium, I was like, let me get on children's track because everything I know that we went through and learned, I needed to make sure we passed on to the next generation. So that's all.
Incredible.
I don't know if I'll ever stop teaching.
Yes, you do it so well. So thank you so much for sharing. And listen, everybody, this is something that is your right. I think Star really brought that home for all of us. This is your right. Do we have any other questions? Because if not, I can go ahead and get started with the giveaways.
Can I just say something real quick?
Sure.
In regards to having your own space when you get to college, because I went to college during COVID, it was definitely imperative that I had my own room. Luckily enough, when I contacted Disability Services, I had my own solo room, so I didn't have to share. It wasn't a suite where I had to share with someone else. But also a part of that having your own space, see if you can move in early. So contact your disability services, contact CC the housing, um, whatever the housing looks like. You can email housing along with disability services to ask them, hey, I'd like to move in early. As an out of state student, I wanted to make sure I moved in early. One, because you don't want to move with everyone else, the whole rush, it's a lot of stress. Two, I wanted to see if I can move in because move in is usually like the weekend prior to when classes start. And as an out of state student, I wanted to meet with my new hematologist I before I started school. So I was able to move in a week early, meet with my new hematologist, get settled in, not have to be stressed that I have school the next morning. So see if you can do that. And all you have to do is contact disability services. They might send you to housing. You email them together. Again, keep that paper trail. And that is something that has been very beneficial that I didn't mention.
Awesome. Awesome. That is great information.
Can I add this to you guys? Because now my son works for a tech company, and that learning to keep that paper trail has worked because when he has to be in the hospital in Cedric, I don't care what anybody says, they're not our friend. Um, you have to fill out paperwork when you're in the hospital so that you can still get paid or get your short-term disability. And they go off of those dates. And if you're not accustomed to tracking and noting who you talk to when you talk to somebody and then following up with an email, people will say and do anything. And then you can just say, oh, okay, you know what? I documented that. Ding, 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 ding. Okay. That's all.
And may I add to what Jasmine said? Jasmine, thank you so very much, Jasmine, to what you said, because one of the things I did miss out on saying is that when you communicate with disability support services, especially with housing, like you said, you have to also contact housing because disability support services is separate from housing. So housing will know that you have accommodations, but it's up to housing to meet those accommodations, right? So you want to have a good relationship with housing because they'll move you a little quicker, because disability support service can say, here are the accommodations that she needs. But housing is the one to say, let me move people around to give her what she needs. And even if they don't have it available, they'll move it around for you. So just making yourself known around the campus, like Jasmine being a stellar student, communicating with people, advocating. They're going to move a lot faster for people like her. Not that they would move for anyone else, but she's made herself known around there. So again, she's advocating for herself. She got on that self advocacy badge. So I salute you. And one thing that I'm very proud of is that you're giving back to your community. And because you're going to be an educator, Jasmine, you're going to be more sensitive to people in there with disabilities, as I say, challenges, because I don't like to say disabilities, but I commend you for giving back to your community. And I am just so proud of you, young lady. So thank you for everything that you stand for and that you stand up for.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Okay, awesome, awesome, everybody. I just want to say thank you. And thank you to everybody who joined us. I am going to choose some winners. Let's see if I can share my screen. All right, just a second. Okay, I found it. All right. So is my screen sharing? Okay, yes. So I am going to pick a name. All right, Cynthia. Our first name is Cynthia, and Cynthia is our $25 gift card winner. All right, so let's see. I'm going to pick another name. Cynthia, if you are here, please indicate that you are here in the chat. I am going to share another name. Let's see who the next person is. Andrea Brown. Andrea Brown. All right. Andrea, if you tech team, if you guys can look and see if the people that I name are here, I have a form for them to fill out and we can get them their prize. So Andrea Brown is the winner of the $50 gift card. So hopefully they are here. All right, the next person is Charlene McKnight. Charlene McKnight. So do we have so let's see if they are here. If they are here, Charlene would be the grand prize winner with a $100 gift card. But you guys have to be here. If not, I'm going to have to choose new names. So let's see. Are they here? Are they here? Okay, they have to respond to the chat. All right, I think I'm going to have to choose some other names. I'm going to pick a new name. Let's see. So, Divine Favor. Divine Favor. So, let's see. Let's see. Divine Favor. Let's see. Oh, okay. It doesn't seem like that person is here either. All right. Charlene, we chose her name before. Let's see if we can get another name. I think this is Cheng Wei. Cheng Wei. Are you here? Now, I know that many of you, if you didn't join at the beginning, you didn't hear that we were doing a giveaway, but we are here and we are giving away prizes. So I may have to. Okay, so Star came up, but Star can't win. Star can't win, unfortunately. All right, let's see. I know, I definitely know this person was here. Aisha. Aisha was definitely here because I saw Aisha in the chat on YouTube. Aisha, are you still here? Let's see. So you had to register for the event. So that is how everybody signed up. So Aisha was definitely responding in the chat on YouTube. Let's see if okay. Christiana in Dioho. I hope I'm saying that right. Okay. I see a lot of people may not be here now. I want to give somebody a prize. Suzanne Brown. Suzanne Brown. If you are here and you hear your name called, definitely put a comment in the chat so that you can get a prize. Isaiah. Okay, it seems like most of these people are not here anymore. So what I am going to do, I am going to Right. So here's the thing. Everybody, you are all winners. We have a prize for each of you. If you want it, we have a book. It's called Hope and Destiny. And I am going to put a link in the chat for you guys to sign up for that. And then what we will do, we will choose maybe like the fifth comment. We'll do just random comments for these gift cards. So I am going to add the link to the prize for everybody. So, everybody that is listening right now, if you want the book Hope and Destiny, which is a book that talks about raising a child with sickle cell disease, and it was written by healthcare professionals, then you will be eligible to receive a Hope and Destiny book. So, everybody that signs up, I'm going to put the link into the chat so that you can get your Hope and Destiny book. Okay, so I am going to, so I put the link, it is on the screen, and that is for the Hope and Destiny book. Okay, so we are going to collect new names from the people who are commenting. So if you are here, put a comment in the chat and I will put your name in the randomizer. How about that? If you are here, put your name in the chat and then I will be able to choose from that pool of people. Okay, let's see. The randomizer. Okay. Let's see. All right. So I see a couple names in the chat. Okay. Hurry up and put your name in the chat so I can add it to the randomizer. Okay, I am adding the names. While I'm adding the names, if everybody who is on, if you guys can say just one takeaway that you want everyone to remember, I'm going to just go in order, everybody. One thing that you want people to remember from today's presentation.
Communication is key.
And you guys can just jump in.
Take charge.
Oh, yeah.
Next person.
Get your A team together, your academic team. Get it together.
Yes.
I guess I can say my mom's favorite saying, you are your biggest advocate.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. Do we have any comments from the people in the chat? Their takeaways from today. All right. If someone can read that for me, that would be
never
awesome.
stop fighting. Don't let sickle cell win.
Okay. So I have a couple more names to add because I want everybody that is here who remembered to stay to the end so that they could win a prize. I want all of you to have an opportunity. So I am adding your names.
D. Nance said, support team, speak up. Excellent.
Yes.
Etta Carter says, make sure to keep that paper trail. Listen, document. As a principal, document. As a mother, document.
Absolutely.
I think this is Tarina, says, advocate always. Excellent. and Dr. Sebiba. I'm not sure if I said that right. I apologize if it's wrong. We can do anything. Come on. Don't let anyone tell you we can't.
Right.
Yes, yes. All right. So I think I have one more name to add.
Okay, then we got
Let's
Carol Washington. She says, advocate for yourself. Thank you, Carol. And Barbara says, have an advocate. Listen, we cannot, that saying, house business is house business, is to an extent. Like Brenda said, you can't do it all. Don't try it because you will wear yourself out. That's how more
Mhm.
caregivers fall off.
Absolutely.
Come on, Francine. Everyone needs a star. And she said we
Yes,
can get in
Francine.
contact with her. Don't forget that. We heard you, Star, because
Absolutely.
I'm going to be sending folk over there. Boom.
She added to the A team.
Yes, she did. Look, everybody's team. Star. I'm going to call Star. No. But it's good. I'm so glad that every time I hear somebody say Black women can't get along and Black folks don't get along, I think about us in this community and how I've seen over the years us getting together, rallying together, learning, sharing, being committed to one another. We don't have to all get along all the time. You don't get along with everybody in your own house all the time. But put that aside and remember, there's an ultimate goal for all of us to make it because everybody should have an opportunity to make it. Okay? We can get that going. Oh, listen, we got some more. Rosalind said accommodations are very important. Always. Oh, listen, I need accommodations for the bathroom break right now. I'm sorry. But amen. We need those things. We need those things. Okay?
Yes. So I have all the names in there, and I thank you all for staying until the end. I am going to pick a name right now. So, the Life in AG World. So, your name isn't there. If you can add your name, you are our $25 gift card winner. I need your name so that I'll know who to send it to when I see your name um, in the form. So the link is in the um, chat. So look for that link that I added to the chat. I will add it again, and then I will choose the next person. So I'm going to add it again, and then I'm going to choose the next person. Okay, so the next person is Etta Carter. Etta Carter, congratulations. You are our $50 gift card winner. Congratulations. Okay. All right. So, drum roll. This is going to be our big winner. I am super excited. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, she won. Let's see. We got to get a new winner. Carol Ann Washington, you are our $100 gift card winner. All right. So, thank you all. If your name was called, remember to add your name, the prize that you won. The form will tell you exactly what to do. And everybody that is on this call, you are technically all winners because you can sign up to get a Hope and Destiny book. And Cayenne Wellness Center, who is the host of this conversation, will send you a Hope and Destiny book. So thank you all for joining us. Today was incredible. A special thank you to Brenda, Vanessa, Jasmine, and Star. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, have a wonderful day and a wonderful night. And we wish you the best as you continue to advocate for your loved ones. I also have one last thing. I'm going to share my screen one more time because Cayenne Wellness is actually having a conference, and it is going to be September. It is going to be September. Let's see. Can you see my screen? It is going to be September 13th through 16th. And the event is the 15th Sickle Cell Disease Education Summit. And this is an annual event. It is a hybrid event. It is going to be in person in Los Angeles, California, and also virtual. So you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can go to cayennewellness.org. Right there on the homepage, there is a link to the conference. The conference is September 13th through 16th. Our theme this year is Sickle Cell Pioneers and Visionaries. Past, present, and future. Are we where they wanted us to be? This is going to be a fantastic event. So definitely stay tuned. Scan that QR code or go to cayennewellness.org to sign up to attend the 15th Annual Sickle Cell Disease Education Summit. And that is all. All right, that is it for tonight, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. We wish you the best. We will be in touch. Bye, everybody.